Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of
The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and scrutinise his policies. Can I welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery and watching on the webcast. This is a Mayor's Question Time meeting of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. In case of an emergency and any need to exit the building, guests seated in the public gallery should follow our security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Members are reminded that any electronic devices should not be placed in front of microphones, which must be turned on to speak and turned off once finished. Can I now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies today from Assembly members Ahmad and McCarthy.
Thank you. I'd like to start off, Mr. Mayor, on a serious note. I wrote to you yesterday about the situation in Istanbul, where Ikram Imamoglu has been arrested, and as your peer in Istanbul, I would hope that you can make representations to the ambassador of Turkey in order to show that we are standing behind him. Can I welcome Year 12 politics students from Wilmington School in Dartford? Where are you? Oh, in the top there. Hi. And also, we're very privileged to have members of the Bangkok Metropolitan Council who represent the 10 million residents of their city. And as members of the C40 network of mayors, can I say, Yindi Banrap Sulandan. We also have colleagues from the investment team at TfL here. The Investment Directorate, I don't know where they are. Yes, yes. Oh, God, we have to have questions about staffing at TfL, don't we? And we also have student journalists from the PA Media Academy. Where are you? Just remember I'm the nice one. We'll now move on to what we've been doing over the past few weeks since the last meeting. Recently, Assembly members took part in the People's Question Time in Haringey to hear directly from Londoners about issues of importance to them. Prior to this, members met to question the Mayor on his final consolidated budget for 2025-26, which the Assembly approved without amendment. And since then, the Police and Crime Committee began its investigation into violence against women and girls, focusing on the impact on young people. The committee also published its response to the Mayor's draft police and crime plan for 2025, and I do note that that subject is one of the priorities for the London Youth Assembly, as they've recently expressed. The Housing Committee questioned guests, including the Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development, about the extent to which service charges make home ownership tenures funded by the Mayor unaffordable. Members of the Health Committee visited Liverpool Street Station to observe a pop-up London Lifesaver training with representatives from the London Ambulance Service, Transport for London and people whose lives have been saved by defibrillators. The committee also held a meeting on end-of-life care. The Transport Committee asked the Deputy Mayor for Transport and the Transport for London Commissioner about the progress towards meeting the Mayor's transport strategy ambitions. I know this is a long list. I will get to the end eventually. The GLA Oversight Committee questioned the Mayor's Fund for London about its work. The Environment Committee questioned the Deputy Mayor for the Environment and Energy on a number of topical environmental issues. And the Fire Committee called on the government to create powers to issue fixed penalty notices and seize buildings to strengthen enforcement of fire safety regulations. The Economy, Culture and Skills Committee met to hear evidence on the work being done to improve London's broadband speeds, the challenges of this and the impact improved speeds would have on London's economy. I should note, incidentally, that the Labour group has now got 11 members, and the details will be reported at the AGM, and I do hope that the Assembly member enjoyed his rest during his hiatus. This week, the audit panel looked at the internal audit reports and risk registers. The Fire Committee held a question and answer session with the LFB and the Deputy Mayor, and the Budget and Performance Committee met to examine the impact of the Mayor's climate budget and Green Finance Fund. And I know this is a departure, and last night I had an absolutely great time at the Arcola Theatre watching an outstanding production of Crybaby the musical. It goes to show that theatre outside the West End is thriving, and I do recommend to everyone that you try and get hold of some tickets. It's like a cross between Grease and the Book of Mormon. You'll absolutely love it. So, yeah, okay. No, it's really good, really, really good. And if they want to send me a commission, I'm sure I'll have to declare it. Can I now ask the Assembly to note the interest set out in item 2? Do Assembly members have any disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to the items on the agenda for today's meeting, or any other relevant interests, including any declarations in relation to gifts and hospitality, which are not reflected on the authority's register? It's important that I pause at that point for the purposes of the public, so everyone can make sure that. Yep, okay, good. Can I ask the Assembly to confirm the minutes of the plenary meeting held on the 13th of February 2025 and the Mayor's question time meeting held on the 25th of February 2025 to be signed by me as a correct record? And can I ask the Assembly formally to receive the Mayor's report covering the period from the 12th of February to the 6th of March 2025? We're there. The Mayor will now provide an oral update of up to 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publication of his report.
Well, I should just disclose that I've not had what the Chair's had this morning, so apologies for that. Last week, I attended MIPIM, Europe's largest property conference, to bang the drum for London, not only as the greatest city in the world, but the greatest city in the world to invest in. My pitch was simple. With a pro-growth government, a pro-growth mayor and can-do councils, now is the perfect time to invest in London, make returns and help us deliver the affordable housing Londoners desperately want and deserve. I'm pleased to be able to report that we had some extremely positive conversations with some of the biggest investors in the world. We'll continue this dialogue with the aim of securing precious investment that can help us to not only deliver housing, transport infrastructure and major regeneration projects for our city, but jobs, opportunities and more money in the pockets of Londoners. We recently launched our growth plan for London, which brings together City Hall, local councils, businesses, the government and many others to deliver growth and send the message that London is open for business. As well as the positive responses we've had in MIPIM, we've seen EY predict that London will see higher growth over the next 3 years and confirmation that a vast £1.1 billion extension of the British Library will now go ahead. This is all a great vote of confidence in our city. Attracting even more international investment into London is key to building a fairer, safer, greener and more prosperous London for everyone. So too is positioning London as a global climate leader that's at the forefront of green innovation. Assembly members will be aware that we recently had some great news in this regard with new research on the expanded ULEZ. And the evidence is clear, ULEZ works. It's now proven that it's bringing down toxic emissions and cleaning up the air right across our city. We also know that it's boroughs in outer London which have seen some of the biggest improvements and that some of London's most deprived communities are also seeing the greatest benefits. Of course, the decision to expand ULEZ was not one I took lightly, but this new report shows it was the right course of action to tackle air pollution and protect the health of Londoners. Chair, I look forward to answering questions during the course of the next 2 or 3 hours. I've had one request for an urgent oral update. I'll deal with that now, with your permission, Chair. My understanding is that the Freedom of Information request sought information relating to Operation London Bridge, the operational arrangements for the funeral of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The information is exempt from release under FOI legislation under Section 24, Section 31A, Section 38(1) subsection B, Section 40, Section 41 subsection 1, Section 43 subsection 2. FOI decisions are not made by me as a politician, but by experienced GLA officials following a well-established legal framework set down in primary legislation. The decision-making process also involves consulting other agencies, including law enforcement and government agencies where appropriate. A high-profile event like a state funeral is considered to be a potential target for terrorist activity, and arrangements for the funeral were highly sensitive and protected by government security protocols. This remains the case after the event, as any future events of a similar nature may follow some of the same protocols.
Assembly Member Best, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You'll be aware there's significant concern over why you accepted free VIP Taylor Swift tickets from a company at the time that they offered you those tickets that were tendering for business at the London Assembly, business that they went on to win. Journalists have submitted freedom of information requests around those documents relating to the decision-making around that process, which were rejected on grounds of national security. And are you really sitting there now and asking Londoners to believe that information relating to why you went to see Taylor Swift is an issue of national security?
Well, Chair, I'm not sure I can acknowledge the answer that I've read out. There were a number of grounds given by the officials, not just national security. Section 24 deals with national security. Section 31A deals with law enforcement. Section 38(1) Section B deals with health and safety. Section 40 deals with personal information. And Section 41(1) deals with information provided in confidence, whereas Section 43(2) deals with commercial interest. My understanding is the Conservatives have made dozens of complaints to the British officer. I think all of them have been thrown out, besides one, which has been investigated now.
So one is being investigated. Will you commit to releasing documents, and we're looking to work with officers to release documents redacted where necessary to the journalists that are looking into this important case?
Chair, the journalists will be aware, as will the member, there's grounds to appeal decisions made by the officials, which I'm sure they'll be utilising.
I would hope you would see why it's important you work to get that information to the public too. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Duval, please.
So this relates to a release of information to the operational planning associated with the former HM Queen's funeral. Right, in that planning, people would welcome that information to cause harm if they could have access to that detail. I'm not sure why a political group on the Assembly would support that in terms of putting in jeopardy future planning operations that would be used then in the past, that would be used in the future. Why? What would that be about? This is not about the central premise that was raised about the box issues. This is about operational issues that, quite frankly, I'm not sure why anybody would need those to pursue the line of argument that that member is pursuing.
I think it shows there's no bandwagon the Conservatives aren't willing to jump onto. Simple as that. I mean, Operation London Bridge was a project that began before I was Mayor. And I was briefed the first day I became Mayor about Operation London Bridge. Over a number of years, we worked towards that. Once Her late Majesty passed away, there were daily Cobra meetings that were very sensitive. And those Conservative ministers acted very responsibly in terms of Operation London Bridge, and that, of course, involves also contracts with the private sector. So, look, it's for Conservatives to explain how low they've stooped, not really for us to try and explain the rationale of these people.
And just to confirm, this is a decision taken by officers, not by yourself or your office.
That's correct. We've had almost double, since I've been Mayor, the number of FOI requests than the previous Mayor, and the officers who do the returns, same officers involved with the previous mayor, and in terms of response rates, our responses are much higher than the previous mayor. So nothing's been hidden by these officers who work incredibly hard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And as the Mayor asked for a point of... Sorry, I thought you...
Point of personal explanation.
Yes, on the point of personal explanation, I think helpfully for the Assembly member and for the Mayor, these are contracts relating to Diwali and St Patrick's Day celebrations in Trafalgar Square, which are of interest and were at the time of the Mayor accepting those free tickets to go and have a great night at Taylor Swift.
Point of information in terms of relation to my question, Chair. The reason why I asked the question is that any operations where there are mass numbers of people coming together, we know there is a potential terrorist threat. I'm surprised the Leader of the Opposition is smiling and laughing at that, because actually we all take these things very seriously about releasing information into the public that can be used against us by those who wish to cause harm. And therefore, Chair, it's that, and I don't think that covers the acceptability of why, just saying it's other events,
so
of why it's
acceptable. The security information, we're all on the same page.
Can we have some order? Can we have some order? First of all, I feel I need to remind people there's no such thing as a point of information. It doesn't exist. There is personal explanation, otherwise it's just it's a contribution. It's a contribution.
I apologise to you and the Assembly.
Yeah, thank you.
I consider what you had to say. Well done, Lee.
It's started well, this meeting, hasn't it? So we now move on to the questions on the priority order paper. Each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions that is proportionate to their size. The first question is entitled Europe, from Assembly Member Bakari. Assembly Member Bakari, please.
Good morning, thanks for your question. London is a European city, and I'm committed to building an even stronger relationship with Europe. Just a few weeks ago, I hosted a roundtable with the EU ambassador and representatives from all 27 EU member states. I reaffirmed our capital's desire, not just to maintain, but to build on our positive relationship with the EU, European cities and stakeholders. I'm fully behind the new government's efforts to reset the UK's relationship with the EU. In my view, the closer the relationship is, the better. The GLA is a member of several European and global networks, including the C40 Global Climate Change Network, which I co-chair, the Eurocities Network and UIT, the International Association of Public Transport, as well as informal networks like the annual meetings of EU capital city mayors. With offices in Paris, Berlin and Stockholm, London and Partners promotes London as a leading global investment destination, attracting high-quality investment that drives job creation, innovation and good growth. I note that some of the Assembly want us to close down London and Partners. I don't. I've always been vocal about protecting the rights of EU citizens, and City Hall continues to work with the Home Office on issues like the settlement scheme and the digital e-visa system. City Hall has funded immigration services to ensure Europeans and their families navigating the UK's immigration system can access free legal advice. I'm strongly in favour of a new youth mobility scheme. I believe this would help aid economic growth across Europe, while also giving young Londoners and EU citizens the opportunity to work abroad and learn more about our respective cultures. And I want it to be easier for school children from the EU to visit the UK and learn more about our shared ties and history. That's why I support a youth group travel visa. I'd also like to see progress on making it easier for musicians to tour in Britain and Europe, and for the UK and the EU to work even more closely to take the lead on environmental standards globally. Of course, we all want to see a continuation of Britain and European unity when it comes to supporting Ukraine to defend itself against Russia's illegal invasion. And I was pleased to see David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, and John Healey, the Defence Secretary, meet the EU's Foreign Affairs lead, Kaja Kallas, in London on Tuesday. And I'm proud of the leading role our new government has taken in moving this forward.
Thank you, Ramadan Kareem. Mr Mayor, last month you told a group of prominent EU diplomats that Brexit was a mistake. Now, I agree. Much of London's business sector agrees. Polling agrees. Not only do voters increasingly view Brexit as a mistake, the polls also show a majority of Brexit voters would accept free movement of people in exchange for a single market access. Now, you've said that you want the government to be bolder in strengthening ties with the EU, and the UK should rejoin the single market and customs union. However, the Prime Minister seems to disagree, saying that he will not accept free movement as part of the EU reset, and Yvette Cooper recently referred to the UK rejoining the customs union as a red line. So in what ways are you lobbying the government to rejoin the customs union? You do have a good relationship with the Prime Minister. Will you call on him to rejoin the single market and the customs union?
Ramadan Kareem to you as well, and those who are fasting as well. So I'm quite clear in relation to the catastrophe that was Brexit. It's the biggest act of economic self-harm a country's, I think, ever done to itself. But also the impact socially and culturally as well have been negative for our city and our country. But we are in terms of our country did vote to leave the European Union, and we've got to accept the results of the referendum. We can't overturn that. The good news is the new government has said it wants to reset relations with Europe. I take from that they've been close for alignment, because you can't get any more extreme hard than the previous government had in relation to the deal with the European Union. And you see the evidence over the last few weeks and months of the relationship our Prime Minister has with all sorts of European leaders, from Italy to Germany, from France to Belgium. And I'm hoping that will lead to not just support for Ukraine when it comes to security, but close alignment on other issues. I think the reality is we're not in the space for a single market or customs union for the reasons you've set out. That doesn't mean we can't have close alignment. And my lobbying, in particular over the last few weeks, has been around the Youth Mobility Scheme, so important for our economy, but also for ties with Europe, and also a group travel scheme. Many European young people haven't got passports, and so they can't come to the UK. What in the past happened was a youth scheme where a classroom would come together. That, to me, is a good example of us having young people in Europe knowing about our city, about our country, and vice versa. It's positive for us, positive for them.
I'm glad you're talking about young people, because this is so important, and particularly our last year's budget process, the Liberal Democrat group proposed a fully costed amendment to allow for the establishment of a Erasmus-style pilot scheme that would give greater opportunities to London's younger people. And the Labour group chose to vote against it. But you loved the idea. You put it in your manifesto a few months later. And thank you very much for loving the Liberal Democrat ideas. They are very good. You do agree with us that the young people in London shouldn't be missing out on opportunities. We have quite a few here today, and they shouldn't be missing out opportunities that were once enjoyed before we left the EU. However, with almost a year that has passed and very, very little detail about your proposed scheme, something that you did promise me last time I raised it, I'd like to get an update now. What will the scheme actually look like? How much funding will it receive? When will it start?
Well, can I welcome the Lib Dem support for my manifesto commitment for an Erasmus-style scheme. So we're doing some scoping work in relation to this. She'll be aware of the sort of things we'll look into: visa requirements, issues around safeguarding, issues around what universities would be involved, issues around funding, particularly if it's the case, as it is at the moment, that our government isn't signed up to an Erasmus scheme. Thankfully, we've re-signed to Horizon. They're all challenging, in my view, with the Turing scheme, and that's what we're looking into this. We're doing scoping exercise, looking into the possibility of running this. There are obviously legal and financial constraints, but as and when we're ready to make our scheme public, you should be one of the first to know.
I really am looking forward to this. So, Mayor, just to finish off on, you did say about the youth mobility scheme. I'd like to know, if you're actually working with the Prime Minister on how that's going to be enacted, highlighting the economic and social benefits for London's young people. Are you working with him on this youth mobility scheme?
Well, I think, as you pointed out, we're in a different place in relation to this issue. So what I'm doing is trying to lobby the government about why this is a good idea. Clearly, there are many in government who think it may not be the best idea. That's one of the jobs of the Mayor of London, to lobby the government, whatever colour the government is, about things that are in the best interest of London. And I genuinely think a youth mobility scheme is a pro-business scheme, because it means younger people, fit and healthy, not relying upon public services, working, paying taxes and national insurance, fall in love, hopefully, with our city and country. So when they return to their country and become chief executives, angel investors, VCs, they'll want to invest in London. It's a win-win.
Brexit has caused a lot of damage to this country, and I'm not just talking about the economy. It's damaged who we are. It's divided families and friends, and I believe it is time to move past from that. And it's not about who was right and who was wrong. It is about the future of our country and the city and its young people. And for the benefit of all Londoners, it is time to rejoin the customs union. Don't you agree with me?
So I think my views on this are well known in relation to the downsides of us being outside the European Union, no option outside the EU is as good as being inside the EU. There are different spectrums in relation to the hard Brexit and, customs union and single market, and people know.
You're going to have to end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question concerns supporting an animal-friendly London, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Polanski.
Thanks for your question. Thanks also for sending my office an advance copy of the report he's published today, I understand, on this topic. I believe that Londoners should be able to benefit from delicious and healthy plant-based food alongside other options. That's why the cafe and hospitality contract at City Hall always offers vegan and vegetarian options every day. The City Hall Cafe has been awarded the Soil Association's Food for Life Served Here Silver Award, which celebrates local and organic produce. The cafe promotes veganuary, bringing greater awareness to the vegan options available throughout the year. Animal welfare is also considered when sourcing other menu items. Only free-range eggs and sustainable fish are served at City Hall, and other produce is Red Tractor and RSPCA assured where possible. The cafe has a vegan meal loyalty card encouraging staff to select the plant-based option for every meal. The hospitality menu has been updated to promote plant-based options. Food is an important part of cultural celebrations that take place in Trafalgar Square, and a broad offering including vegetarian and plant-based food is always available. I understand just this week the GLA hosted a fantastic iftar attended by the members' Green Group colleagues, as well as my Deputy Mayors for Communities and Social Justice and Environment and Energy, and plant-based main meals and desserts were available. TfL has 2 catering providers who between them cover all its head office and operational locations. Both providers supply vegan and vegetarian soup on a daily basis and at least 1 plant-based main meal every day. TfL have had a number of promotions to highlight these options, including in November 2024, a scheme to get a 10th meal free, a veganuary promotion in January, and a number of taster sessions to promote a new range of plant-based snacks. The London Fire Brigade has self-service food and drink available at its headquarters at Union Street, which always includes plant-based food. Plant-based food is offered in all Met Police Service canteens, and vegan diets are also taken into account when catering for officers and aides, such as Notting Hill Carnival. It's important both for environmental and animal welfare reasons to provide plant-based options as widely as possible. Many Londoners have other dietary needs and preferences, and it's right to provide options for everyone.
Thank you so much for that. And there's some really genuinely good work happening on this, and I applaud that entirely. Obviously, it's my role to keep pushing you, and I will do constructively. Earlier this year, I hosted an event at Caramel. Caramel is a community restaurant in Wood Green that's vegan, and always amazing activities going on there. That's a conversation for another time. I did it with Viva, who are the leading animal rights campaign organisation. And what we did was we gathered over 100 people who were experts and campaigners in policies like food, environment, climate, animal rights and anti-poverty. And ultimately, I had one big question, which is what should the Mayor of London be doing to make a cruelty-free, animal-friendly city? And as you say, that's the manifesto we came up with. Now, the first thing that came up over and over again was this idea of plant-based by default. And this is some of the things you were just talking about, making sure there are still choices for people who have dietary requirements or cultural requirements, but also ultimately showing climate leadership and pushing the dial on this. Now, I'd love to have a conversation with you about how we do this all over London, but I want to start with the most local place possible, which is the canteen just behind me at City Hall. Would you consider working with a contractor to make sure that our canteen at City Hall is plant-based by default? And what I mean by that is the first thing on the menu is vegan or plant-based, that it's the biggest font, that it's the most attractive option, and people can still have meat and dairy if they wish, but they ask for it. So we're just flipping it the other way around and making sure a healthy and sustainable diet is the default.
I can already hear mutterings from amongst members of the Assembly. No, it's a serious point. I wasn't being facetious.
And that's why you have to show climate leadership on this.
Well, I think we'd be a bit careful about taking away people's choices and...
We're not taking away people's choices. It's just to be really clear, it's plant-based by default, so you're enabling people to actually have more choice, and those choices are going to be cheaper for people, healthier for people, and better for the planet too.
So that's just the Assembly before you get involved with the staff, and staff associations and so forth. I'm very happy if the member wants to raise this with the Chief Officer and the staff associations and members of the Assembly. I'm quite clear in relation to making sure that there are plant-based options available, but also making sure, a point he raised previously in terms of procurement, the issues, the power of procurement in relation to these issues. What I'm not in favour of is not giving people choice. And I think what we've tried to do is to promote plant-based options, but also to allow people to have choice.
I think a lot of the campaigners will be really disappointed with this because it does sound like outsourcing responsibility. You're the Mayor of London. I'd love to talk to you, for instance, about free school meals and how we could be making those plant-based by default. This is the very first option, though, is just City Hall Canteen, is just making sure there are plant-based options that are the default options. UK Healthcare and Climate Council, that's 50 healthcare organisations representing over 1 million plant-based professionals, are saying plant-based by default is something that Londoners should be doing and London organisations. So one more time, as Mayor of London, I don't want you to outsource it to the Chief Executive. Would you show climate leadership and talk to the contractor and say climate leadership would be plant-based by default in City Hall, to show good example?
No, I want to ensure everyone's got choice in relation to these things, and I think at the moment we've got a good balance between promoting plant-based foods, not just in City Hall, but with our partners, but also giving those who, for a variety of reasons, may not want to have plant-based foods, other options as well.
Could I ask what specifically am I saying that's removing choice?
I think what's clear is that by default, what it often leads to is that being the only option available to.
Well, no, I'm not
patrons.
saying that. I'm saying by default. So the choice is still there. So the question again, plant-based by default with choice, will you talk to a contractor to work with them to make this happen at City Hall?
Well, I think there's a case of verbal gymnastics here. What by default normally means is by default that's the option available. He's now talking about choice, which begs the question, is he suggesting Assembly members haven't got enough common sense to know when there's plant-based foods in the cafeteria? If he's suggesting they've not got common sense, he should say that.
I'm out of time, but the Mayor's changing the meaning of words. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you to the Assembly member to really getting to the meat of the matter. If we can now move on to the next question, it's about London's theft epidemic, and it's in the name of Assembly member Garrett.
Thanks for your question. Mobile phone theft is traumatic for victims, and the distress caused is further compounded by the fear of loss of personal information. Likewise, cycle theft often means the loss of a treasured possession and can leave victims stranded and vulnerable. The draft Police and Crime Plan is a high-level document that looks at high-volume crime, including mobile phone robbery, and states the intention for MOBAC to enhance and build on the work they've undertaken to lead the way in addressing the increase in mobile phone theft and robbery. This covers a 4-year period and as such doesn't go into painstaking detail, but the draft Police and Crime Plan makes clear that theft and robbery will always be areas of priority. The document's still in draft and the final version will be published shortly. Meanwhile, I'm supporting the Met Police Service in its efforts to pursue and prosecute perpetrators and criminal supply chains, and I'll continue to work with the government and the industry to use all the technology and data at our disposal to tackle cycle and phone theft and to prevent stolen phones from being repurposed, ultimately deterring theft. The good news is that personal robbery and bike theft are falling. In the 12 months to February 2025, bike theft and personal robbery both fell in London. The personal robbery stat is encouraging as this category of crime involves violence or threat of violence, so we absolutely need to see it coming down. MPS officers have intensified their work in London to prevent and tackle mobile phone theft through visible patrols and plainclothes operations in hotspot areas. They've also increased their use of phone tracking data and intelligence. This work's been backed up with record funding from City Hall, which is boosting neighbourhood policing in our communities. We've engaged with the Home Office on seeking new opportunities to prevent stolen phones from entering the second-hand market. I was pleased to join the recent summit on mobile phone theft with the Home Secretary, mobile phone companies, the Met Police Service, West Midlands Police and National Crime Agency to discuss our ongoing partnership-led approach to tackle mobile phone crime. And the government's Crime and Policing Bill will create a new targeted power for the police to enter premises to search for and seize electronically tracked stolen goods, including mobile phones. I'll continue to oversee and support the Met Police Service work to disrupt crime and prevent harm, including on mobile phone and cycle theft.
So you said that your Police and Crime Plan is a high-level document. It's about 16,000 words long. It's got lots and lots of detail on many things. Bike theft is not mentioned at all. And as I pointed out to you last time, that's the draft one. The currently in force one that you published in your previous term also doesn't mention bike theft at all in all those thousands of words. On phone theft, there's one brief mention, one short paragraph, and that's why I thought that it wasn't good enough, which is why we produced this report tackling London's theft epidemic, which I'm assuming you've now read. We submitted it as a part of our consultation response. We asked, YouGov had a poll of Londoners last month. They agree with me. 86% of Londoners think that phone theft is increasing. Only 21% of Londoners think that you're taking it seriously, including only 37% of Labour voting Londoners think you're taking it seriously. These are people who presumably voted for you a few months before but think you're dropping the ball on this. The new final version of your new police and crime plan we're expecting next week. Have you actually taken this on board, and will it say something more substantive about phone theft, and will it say anything at all about bike theft?
Well, the Police and Crime Plan is a high-level document, and we'll make sure that when the report is published shortly, it takes on board the views of those who responded to the consultation. The draft Police and Crime Plan is just that, it's a draft plan, and the idea is always to consult Londoners with the things that matter to them. High-volume crime, which includes, obviously, cycle thefts, is in the draft Police and Crime Plan, and when we publish the final version...
Did you say cycle thefts are mentioned in the draft Police and Crime Plan?
I said cycle thefts are high-volume crimes, which are mentioned in the draft Police and Crime Plan, and he will be aware, once he sees the final version of the Police and Crime Plan, what our response is to those people who responded.
But you accept that something about bike theft specifically should have been in there?
No, what I accept is that the draft Police and Crime Plan is a high-level document. We can't include...
16,000 words! Not one of them is the words bicycle theft, or bike theft, or any other permutation of that. You don't think that that's an oversight?
We can't include in a draft Police and Crime Plan that's high-level document.
It's also not in the extant Police and Crime Plan. It should be in there, shouldn't it? 16,000 words, you couldn't find those two words anywhere. That is an oversight, isn't it?
We can't include everything in a high-level document, all the crimes that occur in London. What we have included in the draft Police and Crime Plan is our commitment to neighbourhood policing, which is the way to tackle this sort of high-volume crime. One of the reasons why we're investing even more money in neighbourhood police and why we're really pleased this new government's given us more money for neighbourhood policing is it enables the police to tackle this high-volume crime.
And on phone theft, mostly of those 4 short lines, mostly they spoke about what you wanted mobile phone companies to do. Will there be something in the final Police and Crime Plan next week about what you're going to do?
Well, the draft Police and Crime Plan does set out what we do in relation to the issue of mobile phone thefts and robberies. And as
what does it say?
And as you'd expect, when it comes to the final version, that will take on board the views of Londoners and will be responding in due course to those views that Londoners had.
OK. I mean, what you put out in December was rubbish. It completely ignored bike theft, and it contained almost nothing of any substance about phone theft. So I'll be looking forward next week to reading that you have actually taken some notice to the feedback I've given and the feedback from other Londoners that you are going to start taking this seriously in your Police and Crime Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we know, Chair, I should have a chance to respond to the assertion made by the Conservative.
I mean, you responded 3 times and said nothing, so I'm not sure what you're going to add a 4th time.
Made by the very angry Conservative leader to the question.
I'm angry that you're not taking phone theft seriously. You're not mentioning bike theft at all. Londoners think that you're not taking it seriously. Police data shows that it's increasing, and your response is just a load of waffle. Well, we'll see what's in it next week. It needs to be better.
Allow the Mayor to answer, please.
I'd love it if he did answer.
I mean, this is like the mayoral election all over again, and we know how that turned out. And so I'm really happy if he wants to, you know, have this sort of conversation in relation to a very serious issue. Anybody who's spoken to the victim of a phone theft or a cycle theft knows how serious it is. And because of the work we've done, we now know, for example, the issue of phone thefts is an issue that's common across most of Europe. In fact, the league table shows other cities like Madrid, Paris, Barcelona, Valencia, Copenhagen, Vienna, Reykjavik have issues. So he's criticising us for working with other cities, with the police, with the phone companies to address this very serious issue. But also he appears to be criticising...
He's not really answering the question, Chair. I think we need
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a fairly full answer. Assembly Member Duval, please.
I don't know how you can take it seriously in this meeting and listening to someone who rubbished your attempts to talk to manufacturers about trying to do the best thing by stopping mobile phone thefts, disconnect, all those issues, and actually it was rubbished and poo-pooed that it wasn't good enough. Do you accept, Mr. Mayor, that actually the Metropolitan Police mission is to tackle crime in all its forms? It doesn't have to be specifically in plans, but it's there that the mission is to deal with all crimes from graffiti, vandalism, right up to counter-terrorism. That's the Metropolitan Police's mission, and everything in between. Do you accept that? And do you believe that's what that mission is and what you're overseeing in the Metropolitan Police Service?
I mean, the ridiculousness of the question is set out by the fact that he suggests that every single crime Londoners are victims of should be in the Police and Crime Plan. I mean, it's just nonsense. I mean, anybody who studies Johnson's Police and Crime Plan will know it's nonsense. And actually, to give credit to Boris Johnson, unlike me, his police and crime plan wasn't prescriptive of every single offence committed in London or every single high-volume crime committed in London as well. The key thing is to give the police the resources they need and the support they need. And it's his government that for 14 years has cut police in money, which means it's very difficult for them to take action against those who steal bicycles or mobile phones because of not just our policies, but our investment, but also speaking to manufacturers to design out crime. Why can't there be a kill switch so second-hand phones become useless like car stereos were, the work manufacturers do in relation to catalytic converters? So, you know, the Conservatives don't want us to talk to manufacturers and phone companies. We are going to talk to them.
Will you thank the Metropolitan Police that have been involved in, particularly I know of some in my constituencies, those issues where they've taken steps on the mobile phone, and they will be further supported by the new Police and Crime Act in terms of that, which I hope that the Conservatives will be supporting, but no doubt they won't. They will find some spurious reason why they can't support us tackling crime in our communities. And secondly, also some of the worthy efforts made by the police and its partners, local government, in terms of preventing bike thefts in their local community and the initiatives that have been taken on by those issues.
I mean, the member will remember at the last meeting where this was raised, again, very angrily by the leader of the Conservative group, I responded to explain the good news, which is this new government's given the police additional powers to go into a property where the satellite system tells us the phone may be, or the bike may be, without the need for a warrant or pay stop and search powers, and it was ridiculed by the angry Conservatives. And what's important is that the government is closing this loophole which exists, but at the same time working with manufacturers as well. This is an example of organised criminal gangs. We know that the sale of second-hand phones is a transnational market, so it means the National Crime Agency is involved. And the idea that because you know, the police and crime plan hasn't got enough words to a certain issue, it's not a priority of the police, shows the lack of understanding this former party of law and order now has on policing.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question concerns the London Growth Plan and will be asked by Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thanks for this question. The London Growth Plan will deliver real benefits for Londoners. It was developed with London boroughs and London partners in collaboration with everyone from businesses and trade unions to education providers and Londoners themselves. It's a plan for a stronger economy aiming to raise living standards and create opportunities for all Londoners, helping them achieve their potential. The plan sets out a clear goal to make our economy £107 billion larger by 2035. That means restoring productivity growth to an average of 2% a year. If we get this right, it'll put an extra £11,000 a year in the pocket of every Londoner so they can save for a home, invest in their children's future, or just have more cash to enjoy everything London has to offer. More productive businesses generate more tax revenue, so a stronger economy also means more funding for public services. That could mean more affordable homes, transport upgrades and safer and livelier town centres. The London Growth Plan also sets out how we'll deliver on my manifesto commitment to help create 150,000 good jobs by 2028, jobs with fair pay and decent conditions, particularly for underprivileged Londoners. So another key target in the plan is to achieve a 20% rise in household income for the lowest earnings 20% of Londoners. Growth can't happen overnight. This is a long-term plan and there are no quick fixes. But the plan is backed by shorter-term commitments and there will be immediate action to benefit Londoners in the coming year. For example, I've announced an additional £21 million in funding this year to revitalise local high streets, and next year we'll launch the first wave of rent-controlled key worker live-in rent homes. This is what the London Growth Plan is all about: real action, real impact and a better future for Londoners. We'll now work alongside our partners to put the plan into action with London boroughs, national government, businesses and communities across the capital. We'll keep working to build a fairer, greener and more prosperous London for everyone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for your response. I just want to put on record my thanks also to the Deputy Mayor for Business and London Councils for their hard work on this ambitious plan. You mentioned the government there, and I just wanted to know what you think their role is in supporting London's growth.
Well, first, they could be not anti-London like the previous government was. I mean, the previous government always had policies that punish London. There are often pots of money available we couldn't bid for. Every opportunity that they talk down London. So a start is this government talking up London makes a big difference, not always criticising the city, but also giving us support financially. So in the first 8 months alone, We've had tangible support from the government, a doubling almost of TfL capital funding, really important to growth infrastructure. They've given us the ability to pedestrianise Oxford Street with the Development Corporation. High-speed 2 won't go to West London as an endpoint. It will come to the centre of our city. Giving the green light to development around, for example, Cockfosters Station means new homes being built. And so we've already seen over the last few months examples of the government's commitment to growth and London. And of course, they held the investment summit in London, which brought into our country commitments of £63 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I think it's also important to note that London's growth is good for the rest of the country as well. How will you ensure that all Londoners benefit from that potential future economic success and ensure that it's not limited to just a select few?
Yeah, so we currently contribute, to answer your first part of your question, about a quarter of the country's income raised GVA. We think with growth we can increase our capacity every year by an additional £27 billion. We currently contribute £42 billion net, another £27 billion. But you're spot on, we want everyone to benefit from the growth, not just a minority. And that's why we're going to be publishing soon an inclusive talent strategy that will help train up 150,000 Londoners to have the skills for the jobs being created. And the poorest Londoners, the ambition is to make sure their income goes up by 20%. And one of the ways we're going to do this is by working with the great community across London, the universities, the business community, town halls, trade unions, small businesses, to make sure they're employing local Londoners who've been skilled up with these jobs. And we calculate, in 10 years' time, the average Londoner will be £11,000 better off because of the growth plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Chioshu, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Mayor. I hope you and your family are well. As has been explored from the questioning between you and Assembly Member Small Edwards, your growth plan is entirely contingent on what happens with the government. So therefore, Mr. Mayor, the decisions taken by Rachel from Accounts last year now means that next week's spring statement has become an emergency budget, with the Chancellor scrabbling around to find billions of pounds to balance the books. Your Labour government promised one fiscal event a year, which does impact on growth and your growth plan, and are now having to break that promise because they've maxed out the credit card, borrowed an extra £181 billion and bled us dry already. If this was a Conservative government, you would be crying and complaining no end about instability and the impact on London. So why do you no longer have a voice with this government?
So, firstly, the London Growth Plan isn't contingent 100% on government support, but an example of the difference this new government has made is we had a government minister, the Minister for Growth, coming to the launch of our growth plan. Over the last 8 years, the previous government couldn't be bothered to come along at the launch of any of our plans. This is just one example of the joined-upness, and I've already set out some examples of financial support we've received from the government over the last 8-9 months alone. One example I didn't mention in answer to some of Small Edwards' question, which is relevant to the well-being of our city, is this government in the first 8 months has given us more money for the police than the previous government did in 14 years. And that shows the difference this government is making. I'm looking forward to the Chancellor's statement next week. I'm really sorry he talks about her in such derogatory, pejorative manner. She's the first ever female Chancellor our country's ever had, and as a father of 2 daughters, I'm incredibly proud of that.
Yeah, whether she was a man or woman, any Labour Chancellor is a useless Chancellor as far as I'm concerned. And I would say to you, Mr. Mayor, you say it's not contingent on the government, but yet the government, the UK government, your new socialist mates in government, depending on the day, they're mentioned 83 times in your growth plan. Bike thefts aren't mentioned once, by the way, in your policing plan, but 83 times in your growth plan. And I do say, and the reason why I say it's contingent, because in your growth plan it says, indeed, with the new UK government, we can realise our city's full economic potential. So once again, why are you not speaking up for Londoners on the harmful impacts of this new Labour government?
Well, the audacity of anybody who's from the party of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng to talk about Labour chancellors is quite...
Was she not a female Prime Minister? You shouldn't speak about her in such derogatory terms, Mr Mayor.
The chutzpah, I was on record. I was on record as welcoming Theresa May's election. I'm on record as welcoming Rishi Sunak's election because they broke glass ceilings. I'm really sorry he's been so dismissive about such an important issue. I appreciate... Look, I wish the Tories just give him a parliamentary seat. So we just calm down and relax. But the way he's behaving,
I'm comfortable here, Mr Mayor, with you. It's fine.
He's not going to get a seat. Look, I'm quite clear in relation to the difference this government has made. They inherited a black hole north of £22 billion, and the choice he's got is either to make massive cuts and/or to raise taxes, or to grow the economy. And I'm really pleased we've got a government that believes in growth. It's the number one mission the government has. We're working really closely with the government to deliver the objective of growth. And many of the policies in the London Growth Plan are examples of how we can get growth. Indeed, the prospectus I launched last week at the property conference gives examples of opportunities for people to invest in our great city. Now, he may talk down London, but I talk up our great city. It's the capital city, and we're working closely with the government, and I'm really proud of that.
I'll leave it there, Mr Chairman. Complete waste of time with this guy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has been withdrawn, so the one after that concerns homes in London, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Thank you for your question, Sean. Last week I attended MIPIN, Europe's biggest property conference. While I was there, I launched Opportunity London's new prospectus, a collaboration between my office, London councils, the City of London, and a consortium of industry partners that seeks investment across 20 schemes to help unlock thousands more homes, new infrastructure and jobs in the capital. We've also recently launched our own ambitious growth plan for London, which commits to rapidly build more homes, prioritising genuinely affordable homes, and my forthcoming key worker live-in rent offer. The plan was developed and supported by my office, London councils, London partners and local leaders from business, education and the voluntary sector, including the London Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Small Businesses, Business London, UCL and Imperial College London. I've also been working closely with the government to ensure London is able to play its part in delivering the number one national mission, growth. At national and regional level, we're working in lockstep to turn around the dire legacy of the last government. Late last year, my Deputy Mayors for Housing and Planning held a joint roundtable with the Housing Minister and London's house building leaders to discuss challenges affecting the sector and measures to address them. A core part of my comprehensive spending review pitch to government is for a new City Hall Developer Investment Fund, which would unlock 23,000 homes by 2029. Early analysis suggests that for every £1 of public money provided through this fund, up to £9 of private investment could be leveraged in. This is a hugely positive return on the investment. My housing and planning officers also regularly meet with the sector to hear about their priorities. I'll soon be launching a consultation on ideas and options for my next London plan, with the twin priorities of significantly increasing housing delivery to tackle the housing crisis and supporting and accelerating economic growth. Housing and finance sectors will be involved in this too. I know council planning departments have been starved of the resources they need for the last 15 years, and I support announcements in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill to ring-fence fees so this capacity can be rebuilt. Alongside measures to speed up the planning system, this will contribute to our shared ambition of meeting London's housing need. My continued engagement with the sector tells me that the challenges are significant and resolving them will take partnership work, as well as improved macroeconomic condition, and this takes time. But City Hall's housing, planning and transport powers mean we're uniquely placed to drive forward development and regeneration, and I'm resolute in my commitment to do all I can to accelerate housing delivery.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you for that very, very fulsome answer. I'm going to be slightly cheeky and say I've beat you to the punch because I had my own roundtable around London's future. We were focused on solutions. I think we can all agree on the problems, but we were focused on solutions. So I'm going to ask a simple question. Do you support the social housing sector's need for a 10-year rent settlement, rent conversion and seed funding for estate regeneration and access to cladding remuneration schemes in the forthcoming spending review by the government?
Yes.
Okay, that's nice and simple. You've thrown me now, look. Do you share the concerns raised about the government removing support for first-time buyers on stamp duty and the like, because one of the big questions we had was how do we get more young people onto the housing ladder? So would you like to see the government do something positive in this area?
Well, firstly, I wasn't aware of the roundtable. I'm keen to see the recommendations of the roundtable. Genuinely see if there are new ideas that we've not already considered. I think we'll be careful about the impact on inflation in relation to some of the policies that were there. But I know from speaking to potential first-time buyers, the concern they've got about additional stamp duty they've got to pay. He'll be aware, although many Londoners want to be homeowners, it's a dream many of us have. Some of us have realised it with the help of a mortgage. Many people can't get to rent, let alone to purchase. So I suspect what the Treasury were trying to do is to try and bring in additional revenues in relation to the issues with the black colour mentioned in answer to a previous question. But I can understand the impact this has on first-time buyers.
One of the other things that really came out was supporting renters and renters moving into buying. So will you be lobbying the government to push forward this scheme that I did, that a renter's rent-paying pass could be taken into account when they're applying for a mortgage? Would you help us lobby on that?
Yeah, I think it's a cracking idea. Look, people have been great tenants often for a long time, good tenants, and it's not taken into account. And I think it's a way of rewarding good behaviour, but also not penalising somebody who's renting. He'll be aware there are 2.7 million Londoners who are living in private rent accommodation in London. Many of them dream about being homeowners, and what he's suggesting is a way of rewarding that good behaviour, and I'm all for it.
I think there's a little bit more than as well, just an additional argument for it. We are storing up a large number of people in the future that as a society we'll have to pay their rent when they're elderly, when they're retired, etc. So home ownership actually is very important to the wider state, but I'm sure you're aware of that. Completely changing tack now. You've had the RMT union make a demand in their latest negotiation around paying conditions that their staff should get priority access to to TfL housing that they provide on their land. Yeah, do you agree with this? Well, is this something you'll be doing?
I've not seen the request he's mentioned. What I have seen is the demand for key workers.
Yeah.
To have.
Well, no. Let's be clear. They're asking about their members, not key workers. Their members.
Yeah, I've not seen. I've not seen particular ask in relation to the trade union he mentions. What I do know is there is an ask/demand from key workers, whether they're transport workers, nurses, teachers, police officers, and others, when it comes to the allocation of homes, intermediate rent homes, so not the social rent homes, but intermediate homes, for key workers to have an opportunity to be able to bid for those.
You might need to go back and have a look at it, because your office refused to comment as far as I know, and they're asking for their members. But I'll write to you on this particular thing. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Assembly Member Moema, please.
I'm happy to not intervene.
Assembly Member Garbett, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really concerned about your growth plan and how it actually benefit many Londoners. I think some of the maths is quite questionable, and I wanted to just raise my concerns about opening. London's been open to overseas investment for decades, and what it's resulted in is increasing house prices, increasing rent, land banking, speculation, 300,000 homes that haven't been built that have planning permission. And we're seeing the city emptying out of nurses and children and teachers. In November, an economist from King's College wrote a paper on the UK housing market and said that foreign investment reduces affordability, and that there's no evidence that foreign investment has encouraged the construction of new housing. So it's simply not in the interests of overseas investors for housing to become more affordable. So I just want to know why you think that this will be a solution to the housing crisis now.
So many examples that she refers to is when there was a previous London plan, not the current London plan. So the current London plan makes it quite clear what our expectations are when it comes to housing and affordable housing. What we're not in favour of is the laissez-faire approach when it comes to housing or investment in our city. And I was quite clear whenever I speak to investors, we do want foreign investment for the simple reason there is not enough investment from the government or from British investors to do the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, the housing that we need. So we do need FDI, and it should be good foreign direct investment. And I speak to foreign investors who are creating jobs, wealth and prosperity on a daily basis in our city. And you look at parts of our city where you've seen the fruits of that FTI. But you're right to infer we've got to make sure it's not, a free-for-all, and it's not free-for-all in relation to the plans that we have.
And just making sure it really does benefit the Londoners who really need it. I don't think this plan's had enough scrutiny. I think it's taking a bit of a gamble, and I'm not convinced it's really going to pay off for Londoners. But I'll go back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question concerns budget savings, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Hall, please.
Well, thank you for your question. My budget for next year includes new savings and efficiencies of around £345 million across the GLA group. I've been clear with the group about its responsibilities to spend public funds efficiently and asked them to look for ways to be more efficient. The Met Police Service has an ambitious efficiency plan delivering £75 million in non-workforce savings on top of the tough choices they've been forced to make following the £1.1 billion real-term cuts in government funding over the last 14 years. I've done my best to plug this gap by providing the largest amount ever spent on policing from City Hall, £1.159 billion in 25-26, but those historic cuts have consequences that the Met Police Service is dealing with today and will be dealing with for some time to come. TfL's commitment to reducing like-for-like operating costs and the delivery of recurring savings is a measure on TfL's scorecard and has saved over £1.8 billion since I became Mayor in 2016. TfL now runs an operating surplus for the first time ever as a result of the savings they've made since I became Mayor. Neither of the previous two mayors were able to achieve this. Savings delivery is a constant theme running throughout TfL's business plan and budgets. The amount of council tax income I've provided to the London Fire Brigade has increased by 68% in cash terms between 2017-18 and 2025-2026. Meanwhile, the previous government reduced LFB's funding so sharply that despite my extra investment, the Fire Brigade's income is £150 million lower in real terms this year than it was in 2010. The London Fire Brigade's value for money framework underpins its strategic priorities, and internal government's arrangements have been put in place to deliver its £28 million savings plan. The Fire Brigade's leadership is committed to delivering both the savings identified and the objectives of the Community Risk Management Board. The London Legacy Development Corporation, LLDC's budget includes £6 million of savings next year. Retendering the park operating contracts entered into under the previous mayor is saving £4.5 million a year. Old Oak Common Development Corporation has built-in savings as they continue to recruit their target operation model, improving capacity and internal capacity. Their approach is designed to de-risk the project for the private sector and to save money in the medium to long term. Since I was elected mayor, we've made almost £3 billion of savings and will continue to work to get the best value we can from the resources available to us.
Well, good morning, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased you want to look at good value, and I'm very thrilled to hear you want to be more efficient. So I can help you with this. Recently, it came to light that the Taxpayers Alliance, a group I thoroughly approve of, that Transport for London had the most expensive facility time bill at £7.9 million in 23-24. Don't you agree that that is very, very high, and that would be an appropriate area to make savings?
Well, I don't have the same respect for the Taxpayers Alliance as she does. No one knows how they're funded. It's a very shadowy outfit in relation to who funds them and what their motives are.
Can you answer the question, please?
She began the question by asserting the high value that the Taxpayers Alliance should be held in.
You're stalling. £7.9 million is actually spent on facility time. Do you think that that should be reduced? £7.9 million just in TfL?
Well, unlike the Taxpayers Alliance, I'm not anti-trade union, and so I think it is important for workers to organise, and for those workers who are having leading positions in trade unions to have time off to do the work they've got to do as trade unions. And before the pandemic, that led to not just us reducing like-for-like operating costs at TfL, but strikes being down by more than 70%.
Mr. Mayor, £7.9 million. Can you just say whether you think that's appropriate or not?
So we've managed to reduce like-for-like operating costs.
You see, audience, he doesn't answer. It's quite a simple question. I think £7.9 million for facility time is outrageous. All I want, do you think it's outrageous or not, Mr. Mayor?
I think the member will find those members in the gallery rejected her on May the 2nd in the mayoral election. But I'm quite clear. I support trade unions organising. When you've got a £10 billion budget as TfL has, you employ almost 40,000 people. I think it's reasonable to allow members to have time off to organise.
So you think 7.9 is acceptable. Now, under this dreadful employment rights bill that's going through at the moment, your government say that organisations will no longer be required to publish facility time information. Will you guarantee us that you will continue to publish facility time information? Because whilst you might not be upset by £7.9 million, I suspect the public that travel like sardines in the morning would think that it was a lot of money.
Chair, I'll always make sure that we're as transparent as we can be. This is the most transparent administration that City Hall's ever had, and will carry on being transparent.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So thank you for that. Very pleased about that. Another recent example of budget savings that you can make, we found that it shows that the GLA is spending £447,200 on 6 full-time equality, diversity and inclusion roles. Now, bearing in mind we're not very inclusive in one way in this area, and I'll speak out for men. We've got 65% worth of women when it's a 50% workforce, 50%. So, in a word, on support of men, perhaps that should be dealt with. But even so, I do not think we need to be spending £447,200 on equity, diversity and inclusion roles.
Well, my sex has had a pretty good run for the last 4,000 years, and I think it's not a bad thing to give women a chance as well.
Women are being given a chance, but what about the men coming up through? But we need to be speaking and thinking of them. I've got a list of places that you could make reductions, but unfortunately, because you spoke for so long in the beginning, I don't have any more time. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Best first, please.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, one saving you have settled on is cutting a service that was clearly working for Londoners, the Cyber Helpline, which assists victims of fraud, cyber stalking, revenge porn to rebuild and protect their digital identity. This service also has an investigative arm, which is used by Met officers every day and has led to the reopening of closed cases. It was only last week that Jane Lemon, the head of tackling violence of women and girls, said there was a complete dearth of services for victims. We can't afford to lose this one. So for just £85,000, you could extend that contract for 6 months while you negotiate with the Ministry of Justice to return funding to City Hall. Please, 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 this is a desperate plead. Can you fund that service for the next 6 months whilst negotiations take place so we don't lose this vital service for victims against violence of women and girls?
Well, I think the member's in danger of misleading those who are here by suggesting this is funding that we've always given to this organisation. It was a pilot. And pilots are what they say on the tin. They're pilots. So we funded a pilot originally for a year. But the pilot was slow to increase referrals, so we agreed to extend the pilot for another 6 months. So this is a national scheme to do with Cyber Helpline. Londoners receive a good quality service from the national scheme. We decided to invest in a pilot for a year. That money came to end at the end of those 12 months, but I extended it for another 6 months to extend the pilot, and that pilot's coming to an end. You know, we will now study what evidence uncovered during the 18 months and decide what recommendations to make, and we fund in the future, how the scheme should be changed and so forth. But the logic of the argument is whenever we fund a pilot, it should be in perpetuity. If that was the case, we don't have any pilots.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, you are completely misleading the Assembly. It was a pilot, but it was evaluated as being extremely successful. The reason it's not being funded further is because of a reduction in funding from your Labour government to you to fund this service. That is the reason it is not being extended. It has been shown to be extremely useful to victims of violence against women and girls. You need to put your money where your mouth is and not just talk a good game in this. It is £85,000 to provide a vital service which is being used in great numbers by victims of crime, but also by Met officers that need that cyber assistance by cyber experts. It is a national charity. The service is bespoke to London. That £85,000 would continue that for 6 months whilst you go and speak to your Labour government about why they've cut your funding.
Well, I'm glad the member's corrected now. It's a national scheme. and it's a pilot.
It's a national charity. It is a bespoke scheme for London. It is not a national scheme. It is a national charity providing a bespoke service for London.
So two things she didn't say in our original question. So this was a pilot, and we'll receive an end-of-project report. We've collected the data. The results of that report will inform our future work. Hope it will give us a better understanding of the scale and complexity and the needs of victim, and also what future service levels that we should have going forward.
You are misleading the Assembly. The evaluation, the informal evaluation, showed that this was working. It was going to be extended for another year. The reason it is being cut short is because your Labour government have not given you the money to keep it going. Luckily, this is a sum of money that is a rounding error in a £21 billion budget. Assemblymember Hall has just spoken through all the wastage that we have in this place. You could find £85,000 to protect victims of violence against women and girls. You talk a good game, live up to it now.
Well, Chair, there's never been a mayor in history that's invested £233 million in tackling violence against women and girls. This week, by the way, we invested a further £6 million to support those who are victims of domestic abuse, which was opposed.
So fund this service. Fund this service. There is a dearth of services. That is what your own staff are saying. Fund this service and support victims.
Which was opposed by the Conservatives, I hasten to add. And had this Assembly accepted the recommendations made by the Conservatives, that money wouldn't have been available for either domestic abuse or tackling violence against women and girls.
That's outright not true, Mr Mayor, and the way in which you're trying to mislead both the Assembly and the audience is despicable.
I think this is something that's best conducted. Perhaps the Mayor could write to the member and we can get some clarification.
She's well aware, Chair. She's just performative.
Clarification on this. Assembly Member Hirani, please.
Was that remark in order, Chairman?
Sorry, Mr.
Chairman, was that remark from the Mayor in order against the Assembly Member?
Heaven forbid someone's been performative here, Chair.
Is it in order? It's in order because I'm going to let it be in order, but it probably wasn't polite.
I don't understand what he means, though.
Yeah.
What does he mean?
You can ask that question, Assembly Member. Right. Assembly Member Hirani now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor, the Conservative Group proposed a series of reckless cuts in the budget process that would have decimated Transport for London's budget and staffing levels. What impact would this have had on TfL's ability to deliver a safe transport service across London and also for Londoners to get around the city?
Well, can I thank all those members, not just Labour but Green and Lib Dems who opposed the Conservative motion. I mean, the idea you cut 500 staff from TfL at a time we're trying to make sure TfL is the best service in the country, in the world. And he'll remember the previous Conservative mayor closed down ticket offices and removed staff from the platforms. So what the Conservatives want to do is remove all staff from our tube platforms. They want to remove staff from our stations. That's what would have happened had anybody in the Assembly voted with the Tory amendment. No staff on platforms on the Underground. That's what cutting 500 staff means.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, is there a question there from the Tory leader? He's very angry still. He's still very angry, Chair.
There's no other questions, and so therefore we move on to the next question, which is about commemorating the Bibbas family, and it's from Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you for your question. First, I'd like to offer my deepest condolences to the Bibbas family and my sympathies to the wider Jewish community who have been hugely impacted. Far too many innocent people have lost their lives in this awful conflict. Now more than ever, the region needs lasting peace. As global divisions continue to intensify, our city's faith communities play a key role in promoting peace, dialogue and solidarity. In addition to our annual lighting plan, City Hall considers additional and ad hoc requests, including for commemorations, and regularly follows the government's direction on such commemorations. For example, City Hall was lit blue and white, representing the Israeli flag, following the horrific terrorist attack by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. Some buildings and cities around the world were lit up in orange on 21st and 22nd of February, following the return of the bodies of Shiri, Ariel and Kafir Bibbas to Israel in the days before. As for the rest of the country, City Hall received no request or instruction from the government on this occasion. No buildings in Whitehall or any of the 11 other Metro Mayor areas were lit up. No government or city buildings in Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales were lit up. The City Hall press team received an inquiry from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism on the 27th of February, and this explanation was shared with them on the 28th of February. We'll continue to monitor any requests and stand ready to light up buildings that I'm responsible for at the government's request. Jewish communities in London play a vital role in this great city's cultural, economic and social landscape, helping to make our capital the greatest city in the world. I have a strong and long-standing record of engagement with Jewish communities and will always stand with them. I'm proud to host events throughout the year that are important to our Jewish communities, including, for example, our annual Holocaust Memorial Day service in City Hall and Hanukkah on the Square, organised by my team in collaboration with the Jewish Leadership Council. And I've also put funding and support into work to tackle anti-Semitism in London, especially to tackle the shameful increase following the horrific terrorist attack by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. This has included increased police patrols, establishing a joint transport task force to address anti-Semitism on public transport, investment in tackling the root causes of extremism that can foster anti-Semitic hatred, and investment in mental health support for Jewish Londoners following the attack.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I truly appreciate that answer. And perhaps uncharacteristically, I don't want to argue with you on this today. I instead would like to raise a very closely related issue and hopefully ask for your support. So on Monday the 3rd of March, I met with Noga Gura Arya, the aunt of Eilon Ohel, who is one of the 59 remaining Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. Eilon, himself an extremely talented musician, was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. I saw the video of him being dragged away by Hamas terrorists, and that's the kind of video, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Following testimony from other hostages who were held alongside Eilon but were recently released, his family believe he is still alive but being held in unimaginably horrific conditions. His legs are in shackles and he has effectively lost vision in his right eye due to untreated shrapnel injuries. Eilon is just one of many hostages still being held in Gaza. So what I'd like to ask you, Mr Mayor, is will you join me in calling for the immediate release of all remaining hostages, and would you also consider meeting family members of hostages so you can hear their stories for yourself?
Well, firstly, yes, just to avoid any hesitancy. Of course I will, and of course I do. Just to share what he experienced, there are 59 families who are still waiting for their loved ones to return. That's the number of hostages still being kept in Gaza. And I do say to anybody, who hasn't had a chance to hear their stories, and that's why it's really important that our Prime Minister continues to talk about the importance of a two-state solution, talk about the importance of releasing the hostages, talk about the importance of a ceasefire, because nobody wants to see more people lose their lives and more families suffering. And I know from the conversation he's just had with us the grief, the distress that family is going through.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The next question concerns capacity and resourcing of the LFB, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Clark, please.
Can I thank you for your question? We owe it to those who lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire and to the bereaved and survivors to ensure such a tragedy never happens again. Last year, the London Fire Brigade confirmed that it had completed all 29 recommendations from the Phase 1 Grenfell Inquiry Report, the first organisation to have completed all its recommendations. The new equipment funded by City Hall and protocols action as a result will help save lives. Nowhere is this more important than in the LFB's current response to high-rise fires, including the major fire in Dagenham last August, where 100 residents were rescued or safely evacuated under the most extreme conditions. The inquiry's Phase 2 report recommended that HMIC FRS inspect LFB's progress against incident command, control and operational planning. The inspectorate have said they've addressed this in their inspection of LFB last year, where it found that LFB had made significant improvements in their performance since their previous inspection in January 2022. The Brigade has accepted all the recommendations directed to Fire and Rescue Services in the Phase 2 report and supports the other 7 recommendations in the London Fire Brigade section. The LFB fully accepts the one recommendation directed specifically at the Brigade to create robust systems to gather, review and implement lessons from previous incidents, inquests and investigations. The LFB will ensure lessons from incidents are understood and applied. Significant efforts are underway to improve learning from major incidents and ensure critical information is distributed more quickly. The Brigade will review its operational learning processes and consider best practice nationally. The London Fire Brigade is making efficiencies in the next financial year to ensure resources are used in the best way. I'll continue to ensure the Brigade maintains high-quality frontline services and remains trusted to serve and protect London. To support this, despite opposition from some in the Assembly, I'm providing an additional £20.5 million for the LFB in my final budget for 2025-2026. Firefighter numbers will be maintained, and the LFB will continue to invest in transformation related to the Grenfell Tower inquiry, including protecting investment in modern firefighting training and its capabilities.
Thank you for that very full answer. It was good. Just yesterday in the Fire Committee, we were hearing directly from the HMI, and we were hearing from the Deputy Mayors as well, which was really helpful. Just in terms of the cost, I mean, there's a huge amount of cost, not just in the remediation of buildings, but actually the cost to the brigade. It's good news that you are providing that additional £20.5 million to the fire brigade. So that means we're not losing firefighters, we're not closing stations, we're maintaining firefighter numbers at the same time that they're taking on these different challenges that we see across our city. Are you confident that the fire brigade has the money they need going forward for the remediation of these buildings and the future challenges they face?
Well, I'm really concerned going forward. I think we're okay for 25-26. Going forward, though, there are more and more demands being placed on the fire service that you're well aware of, in terms of inspection, in terms of the data being kept, being recorded. And that's before you get to the firefighting core business and stuff. So no. The good news is that the commissioners had good conversations with the Fire Minister. I think rather than this being an area with two departments covering Home Office and MHCLG, having one department provides some stability and certainty. And Alex Norris, the Minister, is receptive to regular meetings with the Commissioner and brief. And so, fingers crossed for the SR. But I think the government needs to understand that without sufficient investment in this area, the fire service won't continue to progress.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question comes from Assembly Member Duval, and it concerns the Crime and Policing Bill.
Thank you for the question. My number one priority is keeping Londoners safe by reducing and preventing crime. I welcome the legislative changes and enhanced powers set out in the new Crime and Policing Bill, which will help us in this mission. Public safety is the foundation for prosperity, and a safe London is vital to the success of the UK. The Crime and Policing Bill was introduced to Parliament in February and had its second reading last week. It contains a huge package of measures that will make our streets safer, putting neighbourhood policing back at the heart of communities after years of neglect, giving law enforcement the powers they need to protect the public and tackle the most serious violence, and helping communities feel safe in their town centres. Violence against women and girls is a national epidemic, and this bill contains much-needed additional tools to help us reduce VOG by half over the next decade. The bill also puts forward measures that will give the police stronger powers to tackle phone theft. This legislation complements the work we've done here at City Hall with tech companies and the police to take stronger action on designing out and disincentivising phone theft. There will also be the introduction of a specific offence of assaulting a retail worker, sending the message loud and clear that everyone has the right to feel safe at work. And the bill will grant protections to our young people with the creation of a child criminal exploitation offence, which is an important and necessary step in addressing this awful crime. The government will also create specific offences relating to cuckooing, which will help us to protect the most vulnerable people from being targeted by others to commit criminal activity, and also work on changes that would criminalise those who control websites where child sexual abuse is facilitated. This is important legislation, ensuring we have the tools to fight a fast-evolving online threat and to protect children. I look forward to working with the government as this bill progresses into law over the coming months.
And do you think that we should be using the passing of this bill to re-energise some of the partnerships that exist across London, both at local level as well as at sub-regional level, in terms of driving crime down further?
I mean, look, the police by themselves aren't going to reduce crime, fight crime, prevent crime. We've got to be the eyes and the ears, but also partners. So whether it's neighbourhood watch schemes, whether it's the work the business communities and retail sector does, whether it's people volunteering to be specials, there's a role we can all play. One example of the role local communities can play is a policy the Met Police have pioneered called Clear, Hold and Bill, where a council works with the police, works with the community to change an area that in the past was an area where there's lots of antisocial behaviour to an area where it leads to vibrant community, the community being pro-police, but also young people able to play out without fear of being the victims of crime. So there are examples in the legislation, but also in the new police and crime plan, the new Met for London plan, of more of the community, co-designing and co-working that the member feels very strongly about, I know.
I was approached earlier on prior to this meeting by a member of the public who talked about regaining and maintaining the trust of the Metropolitan Police Service to the community they serve. In some ways, the elements of some of this bill can work towards that. Do you agree? And do you have any views on that?
Let's just think about this logically. I absolutely agree. The best way to enhance trust and confidence is for the public to see the difference the police can make for the better. Crime coming down. You're less likely to be the victim of crime. When somebody does commit crime, they're caught and prosecuted and so forth. And so the combination of the additional investment in neighbourhood policing, Bobby's back on the beat, but also giving the police the tools they need. At the same time, the public, the reassurance they need, the checks and balances are really important. And so, I think it's really important to continue to invest on enforcement, but also the causes as well. So the government's commitment to the VRU work is really important as well.
And so let's just turn to the issue about prevention and the role the police play in that, but also along with its partners. Again, do you think that we should be, some people would say, no, you should keep spending it on the front line. Do you think we should divert resources into that prevention issues about giving people information to make themselves safer, but also in terms of working with partners to achieve safety in totality rather than one specific agency?
Yeah, so without in any way wishing to victim blame, if you speak to the police, they'll say there are things we can all do to reduce the chances of us being the victims of crime. Making sure you lock your car, close your windows at night time, so forth, so forth. Particularly as the weather's getting so good, right? Just be cognizant about the downside of leaving your window open, particularly at night time. If you can afford to invest in an alarm for your home and so forth. So this isn't in any way victim blaming. It's the police giving sensible advice about things we can do, mark your property, and so forth. And there is lots of things we can do. And you've talked eloquently about the importance of us working with mobile phone companies in terms of things they can do, disabling phones, not having access to the cloud and so forth. There are also things we can do working in partnership with the police and local communities in terms of what we can do with the community. What we don't want is anybody who's a victim of crime not cooperating with the police. I'm afraid I've spoken to the victims of crime, often the victims of quite serious offences, including stabbings, who don't want to take part in a statement or identifying witnesses because of the lack of trust. That benefits nobody because that person could go out and harm somebody else. So we've got to inculcate a situation where we all understand the importance of more trust and confidence being a benefit to everyone, not just minority communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's about time for a 10-minute recess. So 10 minutes back at, what's my time? 11:38. We now move to the next question, which is in the name of Assembly Member Cooper, and it's net zero by 2030.
Thank you for your question. I've always been clear that my target for London to reach net zero by 2030 is ambitious, and while it's a challenge, I'm determined to do everything in my power to deliver it, because the impacts of climate change are already hitting the most vulnerable Londoners, working-class communities, marginalised groups and young people the hardest. I don't have the powers of funding to make this happen alone. Getting to net zero will require action from all levels of government, as well as from businesses and Londoners. The 14 years of inaction from the previous government has set us back enormously. Whilst the new government's committed to putting this right, it will take time to get us back on course. The good news is that despite the previous government's inaction, we've made great strides in cutting London's emissions. TfL's buses make up the largest zero-emission bus fleet in Western Europe. We've upgraded over 5,000 homes since 2018 with our Warmer Homes programme, and we've planted over 500,000 trees. My London Climate Finance Facility has made over £1.1 billion available to low-carbon projects in London, and the climate budget, now in its third year, is ensuring the GLA's own estate and fleet's work are on track to reach net zero by 2030. We know there's still more to do, and we need to go further, faster. My £2 million Greener Schools pilot will help steer us in the right direction, along with my commitment to increase our public electric vehicle charging points and the bike parking spaces, each aiming towards the 40,000 mark. And my Zero Carbon Accelerator and London Climate Finance Facility will develop a pipeline of low-carbon projects and provide the finance to deliver them. We've also launched Warmer Homes London to transform our approach to delivering retrofit, and the programme has now secured a record £130 million in government funding to deliver energy-saving measures in the poorest homes in London. So we're doing all we can towards the net zero from City Hall, and I'm confident that working with others, we can reach our goal as a city by 2030.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I've got some other questions I want to ask you, but I'm sure you will have heard what the leader of the National Conservative Opposition has just said this week about pushing back targets for meeting our climate goals, and I just wondered if your thoughts were the same as mine, which is absolute horror.
Well, what I noticed was a former Conservative leader who actually became a Prime Minister, Theresa May, slapping down the current Conservative leader in relation to what she has said, which I think just demonstrates how out of touch now this Conservative Party is with the needs of our country, but also understanding the challenges that we face if we don't take action. I genuinely think the costs of inaction vastly outweigh the costs of action, and I think sooner or later you'll see a U-turn from the current Conservative leader, I'm sure, on this issue.
And I think most people in the country understand that as well, don't they? Because the opinion polls are showing enthusiasm for action being taken to address climate issues, aren't they?
I think what you're seeing from the current leader of the Conservative Party is not her trying to win back votes lost to the Lib Dems, the Greens and Labour, but applying to be the deputy leader of the Reform Party.
Yes, I think someone may have actually said that yesterday, that taking instructions from the leader of Reform, which seems bizarre. Which initiatives, in your opinion, seeking to help Londoners achieve net zero by 2030 are currently those that are performing the best?
Well, if you look at our London plan, so if you remember, because I know you lobbied me about this in the first London plan.
I did.
So we have in London the most strictest targets for new developments in terms of the expectation, what they should be in terms of carbon. And we've calculated that our developments with the new London plan versus the national building regulations. If you remember, they rode back from changing the national building regulations. And we've delivered a 55% reduction in emissions, 55% because of a London plan with referable schemes. I'll give you another one that's in the London plan on new developments. 84% of the new developments approved by the GLA just in 2023 had heat pumps. And so that's the difference we're making to new developments, which is really, really important. You will know the impact of the Green Finance Fund because you've been involved in that. But one of the collateral benefits of ULEZ, park for a second, cleaning up the air, nitrogen oxide, nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, the amount of carbon saved is the equivalent of 3 million journeys from London to New York, passenger journeys on a plane. That's the difference that's made.
And of course, you're talking about heat pumps and reduction in emissions, but what that means is reduction in bills for the people who live in the houses. How will Warmer Homes London and the 130 million that has come from the government build on that?
Yeah, you're spot on. So, look, it's not just an environmental issue. it's a cost of living issue as well, because bills come down. You'll have been to some of the new developments where people are paying smaller bills. Their homes are cooler in summer and warmer in winter. So what we've managed to do is, working with London councils in a really collegiate way, set up a scheme, Warm Homes London, where we'll work together to be a central delivery vehicle for us to convert, retrofit these homes. Think about insulation, clean heating, upgrading windows, and we'll do it in a bigger scale with hopefully a multi-year settlement from the government, which means we can be the conduit for these homes being retrofitted, which means cheaper bills for those Londoners who actually could do with, having more disposable income by having smaller bills.
And we've seen a lot of enthusiasm for you continuing with the London Community Energy Fund. Am I right in reading the budget as including money for that to go forward for the next 3 years, the remainder of this term?
I think you're in danger of getting me told off by the person responsible for my grid in relation to announcements and stuff. But you're right to try. But details of timings and fundings will be made known in due course.
OK, well, I'll look forward to hearing that, but I'm very energised to hear about the money coming in from the government that's building through warm homes on top of the work that we've done through the London Plan, and it's good to know that you're on the side of reducing bills as opposed to the leader of the Conservatives nationally, who believes that bills should stay high well into the future. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The next question concerns the A20 Sidcup bypass, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Turrell.
Thank you for your question. Safety is Transport for Londoners' #1 priority. Loss of life and serious injury on our roads should not be acceptable, and road danger must be targeted at the source. TfL and I are fully committed to my Vision Zero target to eliminate all deaths and serious injuries on London's transport system by 2041, and we're making good progress against this goal. 2023 saw a 30% drop in fatalities and 24% decrease in serious injuries on London's roads against the average of 2010 to 2014, compared to 7% and 13% respectively for the rest of the UK. I know there's more to do. Even one serious incident is one too many and has devastating consequences for victims and their families, friends and communities. My understanding, Chair, is that the need for TfL to temporarily introduce a 40 miles per hour speed limit on the A20 Sidcup Road in September 2023 was owing to the serious risk of collision at that location. There was a series of incidents between 2019 and 2022 following moderate rainfall and water sheeting, including one that resulted in an overturned vehicle. This raised significant concerns that surface water flooding and water sheeting in 2023 would lead to more and potentially even more serious incidents. This needed to be addressed quickly, and I support TfL making a risk-based judgment about road danger. Major works were required to put permanent measures in place to reduce water sheeting, and in the interim, an emergency traffic order was introduced to reduce the speed limit on the A20 to 40 miles per hour on the 2nd of October 2023. TfL engaged with the local council ahead of the switch, made the signage changes ahead of time and applied a grace period before commencing enforcement so local people could get used to the changes and were not unfairly penalised. The work has now been completed and the speed restrictions were removed in October 2024. I understand there have been some concerns about the enforcement of the temporary speed limit during this period. TfL has a very experienced traffic orders team who are looking into the points that local people have raised. I know the Deputy Mayor for Transport will be meeting with the Assembly Member on this matter, and I understand the meeting's now been arranged. I'm informed that TfL made the changes in compliance with the relevant regulations, but the Deputy Mayor would be happy to discuss this with the member.
Thank you for that answer, Mr Mayor. Can I ask you, were you aware that TfL knowingly followed regulations for permanent signage when they were implementing the temporary reduction?
Chair, I've had the advantage of seeing some of the correspondence between the member and TfL, and so I know there is a dispute in relation to, I don't want to go into Chapter 3 and Chapter 8 or revisit my law days, but I know there's a dispute. I also know there's an appeal going to the Crown Court, and that's one of the issues, as I understand it, in relation to the appeal. All I can go on, and I say this in respectful ways, the advice I've been given by TfL experts, I can't go behind that.
Thank you for that answer there, Mr Mayor. At the last plenary meeting, this Assembly, previous plenary meeting, this Assembly overwhelmingly passed a motion calling for an independent investigation into how this was handled by TfL. Would you support that investigation?
Well, Chair, I'd have thought the Assembly would be in a better position to discuss that motion after the appeals, because obviously the case is still ongoing. Let's wait and see what the Crown Court concludes. but from the information I've been given in preparing for Mayor's question time, I'm reassured that TfL have done everything they should be doing, cognizant of the need to make this road safe. Let's wait and see what the Crown Court judge concludes after the appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And finally from me then is, as we've both acknowledged, there's a lot of unanswered questions around this and things that do need to be answered. Would you support a pause in prosecutions while these could be answered?
No, I suspect the Crown Court appeal will mean that a lot of those prosecutions will fall by the wayside if the appeal is successful by those who received a fine. I suspect if and I've not seen the details of the legal case, if the appeal is unsuccessful, then those will carry on. So I think TfL have got to carry on pursuing this. I mean, I was criticised previously by one of the members on your side about the TfL not going after fines and there being bad debt. And it seems TfL are damned if they do and damned if they don't.
Thank you very much. The next question comes in the name of Assembly Member Russell, and it concerns the prioritisation of serious collision investigations.
Thank you for your question. The MPS, TfL and I are committed to ensuring victims get the support they deserve, and the Met Police Service does vital work conducting collision investigations to help provide justice for victims, as well as making an important contribution to keeping roads safe through its traffic enforcement activity. The Met Police Service has recently begun to offer new training to officers who may attend the scene of a collision as either a first responder or in some other capacity. The training considers the collision holistically, from initial actions, scene preservation and ongoing scene management through to investigation and forensics. To support victims of the most serious road collisions in London, and as part of my Vision Zero action plan, TfL and MOPAC have co-funded a victims pilot service that launched in November 2023. The service provides direct referrals from the police into support services, where previously victims had to initiate contact proactively. This helps to ensure victims understand the support services that are available to them and guides them through the process so they don't feel alone at what is already a very traumatic time. To date, over 180 people have been referred into the service. The pilot's now been extended by 12 months to November 2025. The pilot's complemented by the Sarah Hope line, which continues to be a resource for people affected by incidents on TfL services. The pilot will continue to provide a compassionate listening ear and comprehensive help and support for those who need it. And TfL has also determined that long-term support provisions should be put in place following the end of that pilot programme. The procurement process for a permanent support service is currently underway. My Vision Zero action plan will also be refreshed this year, emphasising my commitment to reducing road danger. The action plan will set out the Met Police Service ongoing contribution and its priorities for tackling road danger, as well as setting the direction for TfL's ongoing work on road danger reduction. We've reiterated the importance of the post-collision response in the draft new Police and Crime Plan, and will continue to monitor this work, overseeing and supporting TfL and the Met Police Service that seek to prevent all forms of harm on the roads, from collisions to speeding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've received a lot, or the Police and Crime Committee has received a lot of responses to the report we did on serious collision investigation. I'm going to write to you with a detailed response on those responses, which raise a lot more questions. But at People's Question Time a couple of weeks ago, we heard from Abby, who explained being bereaved after her fiancé was killed on a pedestrian crossing near her home. And she described the response she had from TfL, which was, she said, she felt as if she was going through a tragedy, but no one was treating it as a tragedy. And she said that TfL didn't answer her questions. They didn't seem to have any kind of empathy with the letter that they sent out. So you've got your pilot, you've got all these good things that you're doing, and I absolutely get that this is really complex work, but actually things are going wrong and people are not getting the support that they need. So what are you going to do to try and systemically ensure that no more bereaved families, Londoners, experience what Abby experienced when her fiancé was killed on that crossing?
Firstly, the fact that you had already met Abby shows your commitment to this, and thank you for the tireless work you've done in this area. And I'm sure you're aware that there are further meetings organised with Abby. I think what the core of this is TfL being committed to openness. Because actually one of Abby's concerns is one we hear all the time about sort of TfL, sort of, you know, the sort of shuts coming down. And I think there should be a commitment to openness. And so we're working on a protocol. TfL are consulting with families in relation to how we can make this commitment meaningful to families, how they would have benefited from this commitment to openness. We've got to change the way TfL operates, so it's human beings answering and responding as human beings to other human beings.
I absolutely agree with that, but it's also about the Met. Abby described to me earlier this week the struggle she had to get hold of a family liaison officer, partly because she and her partner were living together, they were due to get married, but they were not married, and so the family liaison officer was working with her fiancé's family. But the family liaison officer got moved to another project, kept not answering her inquiries, and eventually she found out from a serious collision investigator that the family liaison officer was no longer working on the project. She then found herself acting as family liaison officer to her fiancé's family in negotiation with the serious collision investigation team. There's been a catalogue of failures. It's not just what went wrong with TfL in this case. And what I'm worried about is Abby was brave. She came to PQT. She told you her story. But there must be other bereaved families who are also struggling to get through the process. So will you ask the Met to investigate the handling of Abby's case and get the Victims Commissioner involved?
The last bit first, the Victims Commissioner is involved in relation to Abby's case. And I don't want to talk publicly about Abby's case, so it's not fair on Abby, who's not given me permission to do so. So if you park for a second Abby's case, and just to reassure you that the Victims Commissioner is involved in that as well. There are two separate issues. One, that there has been, in the recent past, issues with the Met Police Service's Serious Collision Investigations Unit. That's been resolved, been addressed by the Commissioner. There has been historically big issues with family liaison officers. There have been reports done, in fact, about, in the past, poor quality service received. There have also been cases recently where, FLOs speaking to partner and the deceased family also has an FLO, and the challenges the family dynamic has. As part of the work the Victims Commissioner is doing in relation to Abby's case, and I can ask to look into what happened in this case, but I can remind the Commissioner about the importance of FLOs to understand the sensitivities in the family dynamic and make sure...
That's absolutely critical. I'm totally out of time, but I'm going to write to you with a lot more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question concerns cooperative and CLT housing in London, and it comes from Assembly Member Moema, please.
Thanks for your question. I've championed the role of community-led housing in London, and I'm proud to have implemented a number of measures to enable Londoners to play a more active role in building their communities. At the start of this year, my Community Housing Fund has supported 6 projects, delivering 117 homes starting on site. Of these, 4 projects delivering 93 new homes have been completed. My team's allocated further capital funding to deliver 201 homes, and revenue funding to support pre-development costs for 254 homes. This funding has enabled innovative schemes to come forward, like Tonic at Bank House, the UK's first LGBTQ plus affirming homes for older people, which I was honoured to open in 2021, and London's largest self-build project, RUS, Rural Urban Synthesis Society, which is delivering 36 affordable and low-carbon homes in Lewisham. I've also used our land fund to support community-led projects. Last month, my Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development, Tom Copley, attended the topping out ceremony of the first completed home at the St Anne's Hospital site in Haringey, which will contain 56 community-led homes as part of its 990 total homes, 60% of which will be affordable. My Small Sites, Small Builders programme recognises that community-led projects often need smaller sites with smaller contractors. To date, the programme has supported 11 site disposals that have allocated for community-led housing or self and custom built. And through my Community Housing Fund, I supported the establishment of the Community-led Housing London Hub. That has been pivotal in supporting 61 community-led projects in London since 2020, providing support with site identification, fundraising and planning applications. My team is working closely with Community-led Housing London on its legacy plans, so its work continues to support Londoners. I welcome initiatives that mean communities themselves can shape much-needed development around their own ambition and needs, and I'm proud to be a YIMBY mayor, and I welcome the efforts of those driving development in their own backyards.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. I had the great pleasure to attend the London Federation of Tenant Cooperatives annual conference a few months ago, where we talked about the support that their members, many of them have been well established since the 70s, right the way through to in the last few years, about how they can work more closely with you and with the GLA to support this slightly different approach to developing homes. We all know that cooperative and community-led housing is not going to materially impact the total hundreds of thousands of homes that we need in the capital, but it is a really important demonstration of democratic control over one's own circumstances and lives and, as you say, shaping a community, particularly for those groups that are underserved, like Black and Global Majority Londoners and working class Londoners. In that spirit, I just want to know what role you think that cooperative housing and CLT housing can play in addressing the housing crisis here in the capital.
Look, thanks for your question and your engagement with these groups, which is really important, as indeed does Tom Copley and the office. Look, people talk about NIMBYs and the problem they cause housing development. Here you've got residents who want homes built in their communities, and we'd be crazy not to take up the offer that they're making. But it is challenging, though, for the reasons you have alluded to. By itself, of course, it's not going to help us. It's not going to deliver the homes that we need, but it can play a role. I'm concerned, though, by the way, about some of the requirements when it comes to the grant from the government is requiring starts and completions by a certain date. And you'll know, because these are ordinary people in their spare time doing developments, they can take some time. And so they may not be able to get the grant money in the future they have in the recent past. So those are conversations we are having, but they've clearly got a role to play in terms of provision, but also representing those small, diverse communities that you talk about.
Thank you. And that point that you make about grant funding and its availability for the period of time is really important. So with that in mind, and bearing in mind that we are coming to the end of the current Affordable Homes programme, how you think cooperative housing and CLTs may feature in a future AHP, and is there any mechanism to have a bit of flexibility around lengths of time and deliverability against key milestones?
I think MHCLG are quite insistent, and actually I support them, about the need for these homes to be completed by a certain date and started by a certain date, because people need to live in these homes. So it is a challenge for certain CLTs and cooperatives, and so we'll work with them to try and accelerate these schemes. They've also got to be a requirement to be a registered provider. So we're saying to cooperatives and CLTs who aren't providers, can you work in partnership, partner up with somebody who is, so you can receive the grant, without which you probably couldn't do the development. So we're trying to be innovative and flexible, bearing in mind the rules MHCLG have.
Thank you. The next question concerns the Wandle River oil spill, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Roberts.
Thanks for your question. A diesel spill caused by a leak from a temporary fuel tank at Thornton Heath bus garage operated by Arriva on the 18th of February entered the storm drain system and reached the River Wandle. The update provided by the Environment Agency on the 5th of March said there was by then no new diesel entering the river from this spill, and that all accessible diesel oil had been captured and removed from the river. The overall response was coordinated by the Environment Agency specialists, utilising its emergency spill response process. TfL is working with the bus operator to fully understand the causes of the incident and to ensure it does not happen again either at Thornton Heath bus garage or anywhere else across London. TfL has contacted all bus operators to share initial information about the incident, and I can confirm that there are no other temporary fuel storage tanks in use in bus garages across London. The Environment Agency continues its independent investigation into the incident. TfL and the bus operator are cooperating fully and will take any action required to prevent further incidents. Like the rest of the GLA group, TfL is committed to working towards cleaner rivers across London. At my Clean and Healthy Rivers Roundtable last Thursday, over £1 billion worth of investment was announced in support of my commitment to ensuring all communities can access London's waterways and that biodiversity can thrive. This investment will see Thames Water tackle 26 sewage overflows on the Roding, the River Wandle, Lee and Brent, building the work of the landmark Tideway project. The London Wildlife Trust has committed £800,000 for river and natural recovery projects with local communities, and TfL is set to exceed its annual target to deliver 5,000 square metres of sustainable drainage systems for 24-25, with over £1 million allocated to SUDS delivery. SUDS plays an important role in capturing pollutants that settle on the surface of the roads by pre-filtering water and removing large sediments before they enter waterways. The oil spill that entered the River Wandle should not have happened. I remain totally committed to the work we're doing with organisations across our capital to deliver my bold plan for clean and healthy rivers in the next 10 years.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr Mayor. Could I ask, has a similar check been made of temporary fuel storage containers across the entirety of the GLA campus? I'm thinking of possibly fire stations, police stations, anywhere where fuel may be stored.
Yeah, so I can double check that because my notes just talk about TfL bus garages. But to explain the reason why, one of life's ironies, the reason why there was a temporary diesel tank was because of the electrification taking place of the bus garage. So because of the fact that the LFB and MPS are a bit behind TfL bus garages, I suspect not, but I will double check and write to him to confirm that.
Thank you. And could I ask whether a check will be made on permanent facilities? Because some of the permanent facilities may be very old and subject to similar spills. Yeah,
I can reassure him that TfL are also undertaking a check on permanent facilities, because I'm afraid it may be some time before some of those are changed over. And so he's right to ask the question. Again, in the note I sent him, I'll make sure that's addressed as well.
Thank you. And one final question is, should the Environment Agency report find that there is culpability on the part of Arriva, would you be willing to consider sanctions or actions against the company as a result of this breach?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to make sure we fully take on board the recommendations of the EA. I don't wish to, be unkind towards Arriva. As soon as the incident happened, they did everything they were supposed to do and stuff. But of course, we'll need to act on the recommendations of the EA.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question concerns the W14 bus route, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you for your question, Assembly Member Prince. Buses are the most used mode of public transport in London, including by Londoners on the lowest incomes, which is why, despite opposition from some on the Assembly, I've frozen bus and tram fares again this year, the sixth time I've done so. 95% of Londoners now live within 400 metres of a bus stop. My hopper fare allows Londoners to make unlimited journeys for £1.75 within 1 hour of touching in, and Superloop services are connecting communities across outer London with further services in the pipeline. W12, W13, W14 and 549 were underperforming and becoming financially unsustainable. TfL made changes to the W12, W13 and W14 routes last September to create a simpler, high-frequency and more comprehensive network in this part of North East London. I was pleased to see the members' question, as it provides me an opportunity to share the progress being made. 26,000 more residents now have a direct link to Whipps Cross Hospital, who welcome the changes. The changes have increased frequencies on the W12 and W13, with a Sunday service being introduced for the first time at the northern end of what is now route W14, resulting in a higher level of bus provision for people locally. There are now 10% more bus kilometres per year on these routes than before the changes. And since the changes took effect, ridership has increased by 11% in January 2025 on routes W12, W13 and W14 compared to the same time last year on these routes and the 549 combined. Any change to bus routes is carefully considered, and TfL consulted closely with the local community before implementing these changes, including posting information to over 22,000 local addresses. Unfortunately, the changes came into effect at the same time that TfL experienced last year's cyber attack. This meant that some updates were not available for customers when they should have been. TfL has apologised for this and subsequently shared comprehensive information, including online, by post, at bus stops and through briefing local stakeholders. Although the new routing of W14 does not serve the same destinations as before, it continues to provide links to Wanstead High Street, the Central Line at Snaresbrook Station and Whipps Cross Hospital. TfL has plans to roll out brand new zero-emission buses on these routes soon, providing a better customer experience as well as continuing to improve air quality in London.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's just amazing what you can do with statistics, isn't it, really? The issue here really is the W14, which is now a bus that runs only once an hour. And I don't believe that in this great city of ours that we should be having a bus that runs once an hour. It might happen out in the provinces, but seriously, this is like albeit out of London. It is an E number, so it's always been part of London. The service doesn't actually go to the hospital. It's a half-mile walk. I don't think too many people going to a hospital are capable of doing a half-mile walk. And it doesn't really serve Wanstead Station, which is step-free, whereas Snaresbrook is not. So these things have not been taken into consideration whatsoever. We also have the situation that if school children miss the W14, which they may well do because it's only 1 an hour, so if they get held up or detained or whatever in detention, then, or even doing sports and other items after school, the only replacement bus for that will be the W12, which in theory runs every 15 minutes, but in reality it doesn't. We've still got bus stops that show the W14 will be arriving. At bus stops it doesn't even service. It really is not acceptable in this day and age that we are providing a really poor service to our residents in this area. In fact, people are still very upset about this. There is a protest outside, not an angry protest, a very civilised protest, because people in Wanstead are very civilised people. So, I mean, you're welcome to come and meet with some of the residents and explain why the situation is as it is, and for them to actually explain to you the problems that they're experience as a result of these changes. But I think mainly what I would ask is it possible that we can have a meeting with the residents? I'm sure you are a busy man, but I know Seb is very accommodating, that we can have a meeting with the Deputy Mayor, because we've met with virtually everybody else in TfL, and if we're just hitting our heads against the brick wall, Mr Mayor. The stats you say sound great, but the reality is that if someone wants to get from a part of Wanstead to the hospital, they've got to wait an hour, and if they miss that bus, what are they going to do? They're going to drive, and I thought we were all about trying to get people out their cars, not into them.
Well, look, Chair, the members raised various points, which I'll respond to in turn. Our buses are subsidised. It's really important that we support buses, but they're subsidised. We heard earlier on that the Conservatives in the budget amendment wanted to cut the money TfL receives. If TfL gets less money, it means less ability to subsidise things like buses. And so he can't have it both ways. He's either in favour of making cuts to TfL, or he's not. But he's got to recognise that cuts have consequences. We've managed to reduce operating costs in TfL, but at the same time increase buses in outer London. And what, I know that his party's against experts, they're against facts, they're now against statistics as well. Those buses, W12, W13, W14 and 549, were underperforming and therefore becoming financially unsustainable, even with the massive subsidy they have. So what the new routes have done is made them, more people are using them, which means less subsidy required to have them. But also we're making sure we have more provision in Outer London as well. He's talked about the Superloop and the difference that's made. We're working on a Superloop too, another bus provision as well. So, more than happy for him to meet the Deputy Mayor for Transport, but he should be aware of the fact that we already are providing these buses that aren't, that have got increased patronage, but they're still being heavily subsidised, and he's got to recognise that.
I haven't got much time, but would you be happy to come and meet with the residents after the meeting, Mr Mayor?
Happy to subject to my diary to meet with anybody, but what may be more conducive to
they're only going to be outside immediately the meeting finishes, Mr Mayor.
What will be more conducive in relation to the concerns he's got about this bus service is to speak to the Deputy Mayor about some of the challenges we've had, but also some of the difference we've made by the investment in the W12, 13 and W14.
So was that a yes or a no, Mr Mayor?
I've got no idea what I'm doing after this meeting, but subject to my diary, I'm more than happy to meet anybody.
That's very kind of you, thank you.
The next question is in my name, so we'll go on the clock, Mr Mayor, and it concerns the Chinese Embassy planning application.
Thank you, Chair. A planning application to develop the site at Royal Mint Court was made to the London Borough of Tower Hamlets last year. Beg your pardon. This application was a resubmission of the same scheme that Tower Hamlets Council refused on the 1st of December 2022. Following the initial refusal in January 2023, The early application was considered at stage 2 by my Deputy Mayor for Planning. It was considered that there was no sound planning reasons to intervene and call in the planning application, meaning that my Deputy Mayor was content for Tower Hamlets to determine the case itself. The applicant did not appeal Tower Hamlets' decision to refuse the planning permission. As a result, the previous Secretary of State never had the opportunity to rule on the scheme. On the 24th of September 2024, the resubmitted planning application was assessed at stage 1 by my Deputy Mayor for Planning against London Plan policies. The application was supported in strategic land use, urban design and transport grounds, and it was found that no harm would be caused to the significance of heritage assets. The Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government took the decision to call in the resubmitted application on the 14th of October 2024 so that she would be the ultimate decision maker. The Government can call in plan applications where they consider there may be issues of national significance having regard to published government policy. Even though Tower Hamlets could no longer determine the plan application, their Strategic Development Committee considered the application on the 9th of December 2024. The committee had concerns over the impact on resident and tourist safety, heritage, police resources and highway safety, given the congested nature of the area. Their judgment was informed by an objection from the Met Police Service. A public inquiry was held between the 11th and 18th of February this year. The planning inspector will recommend whether permission should be granted or not, and the Deputy Prime Minister will then make the final decision on the application. The Met Police Service withdrew their objection prior to the start of the inquiry, and at the inquiry, Tower Hamlets Council confirmed it was unable to argue against the proposal. The GLA did not appear at the public inquiry, and I have not made any representations to the Deputy Prime Minister. Following the recommendations from the planning inspector, it will then be for the Deputy Prime Minister to either approve or refuse the application.
You have strategic planning responsibilities, and this application does have some regional significance. Were you approached by the Foreign Secretary on this matter, either verbally or in writing?
No.
The police formally objected to the proposal on the 9th of December. Did you or your staff communicate with the Metropolitan Police subsequent to the 9th of December regarding this matter?
No, I didn't.
What about members of your staff?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I would be grateful if you could respond in writing to tell me whether or not there was a communication taking place.
I'm more than happy to.
Thank you. This objection was withdrawn on the 17th of January following a visit to China by the Chancellor based on a report that had been commissioned by the Chinese government. Would you be asking the Metropolitan Police why they changed their mind on this issue?
I think it's really in the public domain why the Met Police Service changed their mind. I can send him media articles if he wants, but it's already in the public domain.
Have you met with any local councillors from Tower Hamlets regarding this issue?
No, it's inappropriate to discuss planning matters with me or the Deputy Mayor for obvious reasons that he'll appreciate.
If the Deputy Mayor has already ruled and this planning application has now been taken over by the Secretary of State, there's no reason why you shouldn't.
I beg your pardon, I thought you meant in the past tense.
Yes, in the past tense?
Currently, yes. No, past tense, definitely not. Currently not, as far as I'm concerned. I can, again, when I respond to him on the other matter, I can respond to him in relation to the Deputy Mayor as well, if that addresses the concern.
Thank you. Will you meet with... Oh, actually, I'll move on to this first. You and your Deputy Mayor originally objected to this Assembly's request to you to name the C3 cycleway to the Joshua Wong cycleway. People might be familiar that that cycleway runs past the site of the Chinese embassy. And the reason being is that giving these routes names would be confusing for commuters. This was just before you named the Mildmay, Suffragette, Windrush, Lioness and Liberty lines. Will you revisit that decision?
I'm not aware about the cycle network scheme he's talking about, but I'm more than happy to look into that.
It was a motion, and you answered me in 2021 and gave me the same line, that it would be confusing for commuters to have to negotiate a name rather than a number of a cycleway. But your commitment is that you will revisit that. Is that correct?
No, it isn't. My commitment is I'll look into the motion in whatever month it was in 2021.
And will you reply to me with your conclusions on that?
No, I'll look into the motion passed in 2021 and consider if there's...
I'm asking you to revisit your decision, and will you write to me to say what your decision is?
I'm more than happy to get the Walking and Cycling Commissioner to address the points that you're raising today.
Okay. Will you meet with representatives of the Hong Kong community to listen to their concerns about the placing of the Chinese embassy there? And this, for the record, Mr. Mayor, we've had an instance in the Manchester Chinese embassy where a protester was dragged off the street and beaten up by embassy officials. They're concerned that they've escaped here, many have escaped here to this great city because of the freedoms that we have. Would you meet with members of the Hong Kong community to talk about their concerns over this application?
I meet residents of not just the Hong Kong community but others on a regular basis. More than happy for the relevant Deputy Mayor or myself to meet them as soon as we can.
Thank you very much. That's me. Assembly Member Desai, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, as you already mentioned, Tower Hamlets Council has twice rejected this planning application. My own personal position was, right from the beginning, I opposed it as well, on planning grounds, not political grounds. The police previously objected to the application because of concerns relating to protests at the site and the impact this would have on both police resources and the need for road closures, which would cause transport challenges in the local area. Since 2019, there have been 37 protests against the Chinese government in London. And the last one, in fact, was last Saturday, where I think over 1,000 people attended. And we can expect more to be held at the Royal Mint Court should the embassy be built. Do you share my concerns around policing, security and traffic management? And will you be in a position to convey this to the Secretary of State?
Well, I think we're in danger of misinterpreting the Met Police position. The Met Police position, as I understand it, is that there is sufficient space for future protests to be accommodated.
I think they did issue something to that effect, but as I'm mystified at their change in position because...
Again, I'm more than happy, Chair, when I write to Chair, with your permission, can I copy some of just sign it because I think it raises the same issues that some of the decides go as well.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Small Edwards, and it concerns new towns.
Thanks for your question. The creation of new towns, including in London, will be critical if we're to provide Londoners with the good quality and affordable homes they need, and to ensure our city can continue to function as an engine of economic growth. Last century, 32 new towns were built across the country, now home to nearly 3 million people. If these historic new towns programme had continued, we wouldn't face the national housing shortage and result in affordability pressures that so many Londoners are experiencing today. London might not immediately spring to mind as the most obvious location for a new town, but we've recent examples of successes like the creation of Barking Riverside, a new town, and one of Europe's largest placemaking projects. It will regenerate the whole local area through transport extensions, enhanced green spaces, 7 new schools, and up to 20,000 new homes. The government's also signalled a strengthened link between new towns and development corporations through its new Plan and Infrastructure Bill. I'm open to exploring more mayoral development corporations to unlock housing and economic growth in London. My Deputy Mayors for Housing and Planning have met with Sir Michael Lyons, Chair of the New Town Task Force, and discussed what would make a new town successful in London. First, it's critical that any new towns are planned appropriately in terms of density, affordability and connection to sustainable transport networks. Second, it's important that homes delivered in new towns are counted towards meeting London's housing targets, providing an incentive for boroughs to get on board. Finally, it's critical that these new towns are supported by appropriate levels of government investment. I hope that the government makes clear its funding intentions for new towns at the CSR this year, and I'll continue to engage closely with them and the expert panel as the work continues.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that response. And yeah, I just want to put on record that the level of ambition shown by the government, I think, on this is very welcome. And you referenced in that answer the government's Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which was published last week. What do you think that might mean for London?
I welcome the publication of the bill, and it's quite clear that the Minister in charge, Matt Pennycook, and the Secretary of State, Angela Rayner, have listened some of the issues we've raised, and in fact developers raised as well, that the Lord Bailey talked about in relation to making it easier to get planning permission, really important for developers. Prioritise key infrastructure. There's a big concern in relation to land assembly and around CPOs as well in there. Giving more powers to development corporations. The thing that is potentially really game changer for us is land value and the so-called hope value when it comes to land, which affects viability. And that's one of the reasons why I think the bill is generally welcomed across the industry, as well as by those who are in desperate need of housing. Frankly speaking, the sooner it can become an act of parliament we get going, the better. But developers now know the direction of travel, as do councils, and that'll hopefully speed things along.
Thank you. And yeah, there are, of course, major issues with the amount of time it can take schemes to get through planning. So I do welcome the measures set out in the Planning Infrastructure Bill, and also the fact that you've referenced this in the London Growth Plan. However, we also have the issue that there are 300,000 homes in London with permission at the moment that aren't getting built out. So my question is just, what are you doing to try and expedite that?
Yeah, the reason why it's important you mentioned that stat is it rebuts the perception that all councils say no and all councils work on the NIMBY process. They clearly don't, because they've given permission to more than 300,000 homes that haven't been completed yet. The good news is about 180,000 of those have had some work started on them, and so that's good news, but it's still quite a lot where it hasn't started. So we're speaking to councils and the government about and trying to analyse what we think the reasons are for these homes not having got going. Some is because they're tall buildings. There's challenges with the second staircase, with the need to get building safety regulator consent and so forth. So we're working with MHCLG and also to see if out of that will come a sort of an accelerated programme to really get these going, because there's no reason why these homes that have been given permission can't be built.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I get the agreement of the meeting to suspend Standing Order 2.9b in order to allow the remaining business on the agenda to be completed? Thank you. We now go on to Assembly Member Muff. Actually, that question I think has been withdrawn. I beg your pardon. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Mahfouz, and it concerns fiscal devolution.
Thanks for your question. The government recently published the English Devolution White Paper, which is an important step forward for devolution in London and across the country. The government's been clear this is the start of the process, the floor not the ceiling, and I look forward to continue to work with them to seize the opportunity for further devolution. I've long made the case for greater fiscal devolution for London. Fiscal devolution would bring decision-making closer to local leaders and to local people. It would reduce our reliance on national government and would mean spending less time bidding for national resources. It would also allow for greater accountability. Londoners would be able to see a clearer link to the taxes they pay and public services they receive. Most importantly, it would mean we can make our own choices about the money we invest locally based on our understanding of local need. This new white paper shows the government's commitment to ceding powers to regional and local leaders in the national interest. But moving forward with fiscal devolution will take time. The good news is that the government is already taking important steps to rectify the mistakes of the previous one. The pledge to work with us to implement a multi-year integrated settlement will be a game changer for the capital, and it will give us much greater freedom to deliver on our priorities. This is a crucial step towards further fiscal devolution, and I'm confident that the government won't stop there. That's because this government understands that devolution works and that giving mayors more power and responsibility is key to improving public services and to driving economic growth across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Ramadan Kareem to you and your family. One of the things that you talked about there is in terms of resources and funding for things like growth and infrastructure in this great capital. In 2018-19, London piloted a scheme where 100% of the business rates that were paid were maintained within London, and that gave us that sort of element of devolution, fiscal devolution, that allowed us to be able to spend in those key projects. The scheme was, of course, scrapped by the previous government during the pandemic, despite its early success. Would you like to see that returned?
Yeah, Philip Hammond, as the Chancellor, deserves huge credit because he trusted us. Just to remind colleagues, we only got the growth 100%, not the entire business rates. The government kept the business rates, but any growth we were able to keep with councils and reinvest on growth issues to generate more growth And the idea was it was a virtuous circle. And we used some of the money for the East Bank, which is now fantastic, around the LDC, OPDC, around the rollout of full fibre infrastructure on the underground, which is leading to people having 4G and 5G, around growth and skills. So we are lobbying the government for us to be able to retain 100% of growth, and just to reassure the government and others in other parts of the country, we're not suggesting we keep all the business rates generated in London. We believe in redistribution. Those with the broader shoulders carry the greatest burden. But if we had more of the growth, we think generate more growth, which means more money going to the Treasury.
Fantastic tangible achievements and difference on the back of that. Now, earlier this year, as you'll be aware, TripAdvisor identified that London was the greatest city in the world
for the first time ever.
To visit. Yeah, first time ever. But if I'm going to roll off a list of decent places to visit, and they are Amsterdam, Barcelona, Berlin, Paris, Prague, Vienna, Tokyo, New York City, Lisbon. I could go on, but all of those cities have one thing in common, and is that they are able to have a tourism levy, which they have. Is it about time that London has the power to do the same thing?
The thing about those cities is many of us visit those cities and don't really mind paying the extra few euros in relation to a tourism levy. I think the government should be looking at giving us the powers to have an accommodation levy. But my promise to the hotels and Airbnbs and so forth is the money would be used to improve the environment around that, to encourage more tourists. What would be unfair, I think, is if money was raised and was spent elsewhere and people didn't see the benefits of the money's being raised locally or regionally. So it's really important to give that reassurance to the sector, because they've had a tough few years, particularly post-pandemic and so forth. And so if we can reassure the sector that we can work on a scheme that benefits inward tourism, benefits more tourists to come, I think they'd be supportive of it as well.
Thank you, Mayor, for that reassurance. And clearly, if it works well in places like Paris and New York City, it could work here. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question comes from Assembly Member Garbett, and it's about the London Drug Commission next steps.
Thanks for your question. The Independent London Drugs Commission, chaired by Lord Faulkner, has been examining a vast amount of national and international research and evidence concerning the impact of cannabis on people's lives and communities. MOPEC is working with the Commission to finalise a publication date, and I'd be happy to ask the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime to advise members when this has been confirmed. When I established the Commission, I was clear on its parameters. The only substance the report would focus on was cannabis, and it would aim to bring about genuine national debate on the effectiveness of our current drugs laws as they relate to cannabis. When the Commission's report is published, I believe it will achieve this aim, and I encourage everyone with an interest in this issue to read the report when it's available. As set out in the Commission's terms of reference, it was envisaged that the Commission's work would last a year. Given the vast amount of evidence collected by the Commission and the significant international work on the issue that was released last year, it was necessary to extend this timeframe. However, this is the only issue the Commission work asked to investigate, and there are no further plans for the Commission. My London Drugs Forum will continue to look at a range of drug-related issues. I established the Forum in 2022 as a multi-agency partnership that aims to tackle drug-related crime and wider harms through public health and criminal justice lens. The Forum has already strengthened our approach by getting drugs workers into custody suites to provide timely interventions, as well as supporting the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, OHID, to improve London's continuity of care rate. The Forum and my offices in the GLA's Public Health Unit and MOPAC will continue to work with the government to ensure that any changes to the national drug strategy reflect what's needed in London. Maintaining a dual public health and criminal justice approach to this work will be crucial so we can support those who require treatment and assistance, whilst ensuring the MPS has every tool at its disposal to target those who are perpetrating the drug-related crimes that can be so harmful to individuals and communities.
Thank you for that response. And on behalf of families and other people who gave evidence, it's really great to hear that that date will come from the Deputy Mayor, because it couldn't come sooner. But just in the interest of time, I wanted to focus on the beginning of the month. Over 30 people became very unwell and overdosed on a heroin supply in Camden that was infected by synthetic opioids. We knew that this was coming, and I think it's really alarming that 17 people ended up in hospital, and it was really quite devastating. Lots of people's lives were saved from naloxone, and I wondered if this event has encouraged you to revisit carrying naloxone. As as being first responders. So if you've had any conversations with the Commissioner about that.
I think the police have previously responded to issues raised by the London Drugs Forum, and the concern the police have is this would be yet another additional piece of kit officers have got to carry. And I think the Police Federation were concerned about the impact on their members. The health professionals who provided the naloxone to those who had taken this drug, saved their lives. But this was administered by health professionals rather than police officers.
It's administered by loads of people. You've got market traders carrying it. You've got police services all across the country. I've been trained as a counsellor, and I just think as first responders we should be doing everything we can to save lives. So I'd implore you to revisit that, but I'm out of time.
Thank you. The next question concerns combating faith-based hate crime, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Hirani.
Can I thank the member for his question? There's no place for any kind of hate crime in London. Our draft police and crime plan is clear that we'll continue to work with the Met Police Service, the CPS communities and partner organisations to bear down on spikes in hate crimes such as anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in London. I want to thank the Assembly Member Hirani for the event he held at City Hall earlier this week, where the Deputy Mayor of Police and Crime spoke on the issue of Hindu phobia, which I know is a real big concern for those Londoners of Hindu faith. Historically, most hate crimes reported in London are racially motivated, and that continues to be the case. However, spikes in hate crime can follow national and international events over which Londoners have no control, and this is particularly the case with faith-based hate crimes. We've seen an appalling rise in reports of hate crime connected to the conflict in the Middle East, with London's Jewish and Muslim communities being targeted in shameful ways. Events like these also increase a sense of insecurity and vulnerability among members of other faiths and communities who've been targeted in the past. So it's important that we all look out for each other in times like these. In the immediate aftermath of the increases, I met with Jewish and Muslim representatives along with the police to discuss what they needed to help keep their communities feeling safe, and this engagement is ongoing. At the same time, the police increased patrols in affected areas and made thousands of visits to schools, synagogues, mosques and community centres to provide advice and reassurance. Mosques and synagogues are still able to apply for government funding to pay for physical security measures. Alongside this, independent evaluation has demonstrated the success of our Shared Endeavour Fund projects in preventing and responding to hatred and intolerance, and I've already recommitted to building on these successes by providing a fifth round of funding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your reference to the event hosted earlier this week, bringing together key people from Hindu organisations across all of London, the CPS, the Met Police, and also the Deputy Mayor of London for Policing and Crime, to come together to tackle anti-Hindu hate crime in London. Half of all of the UK's Hindus live in London, and they are a crucial part of our capital city. And it follows the unanimously supported motion here at City Hall from all Assembly members, which came together on this issue, and looking at data pre-7th October 2023 data, which shows that Hindus were the second most likely group to be targets of racially or religiously motivated hate crime. Underreporting was raised as an issue at the event on Monday. What more can be done to encourage confidence in reporting of hate crimes?
Well, I mean, you've brought this issue to international attention, which is really important, so thank you. You've been working on this for a number of years. It's just worth reminding ourselves, no one's talking about a blasphemy law, right? What we're saying is there are some racists who've realised the law protects people on the grounds of the colour of their skin, but there's a loophole when it comes to the religion they follow. So Hindus are being attacked because of them being Hindus. So nobody's talking about a theological debate and discussion. It's about hatred that people who receive because they follow the Hindu faith. And that's why you mentioned the phrase the anti-Hindu hatred, which is really important. And I worry about races becoming more and more sophisticated to find ways to espouse their hatred that a loophole provides. And that's why I think you're right to encourage the greater recording of this, because unless we measure it, we don't know how bad the problem is, but also why people report it if they think it's not being measured and not being taken seriously. So the job you're doing, raising awareness of this issue, is really important. That's why I was really pleased for the Deputy Mayor to be there and speak, and the other partners as well. And what I'd encourage you to do is, because of your expertise, also bring to the attention of national colleagues as well. You all know the role of College of Policing, the National Police Chiefs Council and others. The CPS were one such organisation, but it is really important we talk about this and bring it to the fore.
Thank you. There are some amazing organisations that are doing some fantastic work on hate crime in general, to name initiatives such as Tell Mama and the CST. But one of the issues that came to the forefront was the lack of a organisation looking at anti-Hindu hate crime specifically. Now, there appears to be some momentum now from the community to develop such an organisation, working in partnership with the CST and getting help and support from them to do so as well. So I hope that you'll look at progress on this issue and make sure that the Met Police and partners here from City Hall will engage with a properly constituted organisation that looks at tackling anti-Hindu hate crime.
Well, I wasn't aware, Chair, that the CST are also helping the Hindu community. The CST do great work with the Jewish community. They also help the Muslim community. It's just worth putting on record my thanks to all those who work in this area. And it's a really good example of allyship. I know that word was denigrated by some in the Assembly at the People's Question time. But allyship is really important. And so it's really good to see the CST once again coming to the fore to help those vulnerable Hindus suffering hatred for no other reason, but because of the religion they belong to.
Thank you. And specifically, we have seen a huge spike in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate crimes since the 7th of October 2023. What have you done and what will you ensure to do going forward as well to give our Jewish and Muslim communities confidence that they are safe in London?
Yeah, well, as I said in answer to my question, it's heartbreaking to see the massive increase in anti-Semitism and indeed anti-Muslim hatred since October 2023. So with the Jewish community, we've been working really closely since the outset. I mean, I remember coming back early from conference. It took place during LAPAC conference. To meet, Jewish leaders, faith leaders and others in their community after the horrors of what happened, at the hands of Hamas. Since then, lots of work been done to reassure the community with policing presence, working closely with the CST, regular presence at synagogues, places of worship. Going with them to celebrate events is really important. You all know the work the police is doing, respecting the law, but also understanding that there are actually Saturdays are days of worship for Jewish Londoners, and sometimes a process route can cause distress and fear for Jewish Londoners going about their business to worship. The protesters may not intend to do that, but it's a consequence sometimes of them protesting outside synagogues and so forth. So that's why I know it's frustrating for protesters, why sometimes the police put down conditions. And we're going to carry on working closely with this community, including funding, support and allyship.
Thank you. Last week, Assemblymember Clark and myself attended an iftar at the Central Mosque of Brent in Wilson Green, and it was quite unique in the sense that fast was opened using Purim traditions, given the interfaith nature and the interfaith audience that we had breaking fast together. How important is it that communities come together to observe each other's festivals and work together to tackle hate?
Well, I attended that similar iftar last Ramadan, not this Ramadan. It's just which other cities in the world could you have Hanukkah being celebrated the same week as Christmas, where you can have the sort of iftar taking place you're talking about, particularly in the context of what's happening in the Middle East. I hope there wasn't any ribbon or competition about which fast is harder, because often there's some teasing about which fast is easier and which fast is harder. As somebody going through the Muslim fast, it's hard, man.
Thank you. Also, it was a festival of Holly, which the Deputy Mayor, Debbie Weeks Bernard, attended with myself at the Sanathan Temple in Wembley. So a week of festivals. Just on hate crime, so looking at the police and crime plan going forward, what changes do you think we will see coming forward from the Met in terms of improving how they work with communities?
Well, first, I hope the holly powder came out of your clothes. They didn't come out of mine. But secondly, it is really important to evolve our strategy in response to what the community is saying and the experience. The last time the police and crime plan was written, we hadn't had what we've seen in the Middle East at the level we've seen since October 2023. I'm fully aware that there are people in London who may have lost loved ones either in Israel or in Gaza, or actually indeed in West Bank. I spoke to somebody last week who lost somebody in West Bank. And so it's really important to be aware, because we're a global city, what happens often in other parts of the world affects us for good, and sometimes it provides challenges as well. So the responses to the consultation will be looked at. We'll be publishing the police crime plan in due course. We're going to recognise actually the police have a role to play, but actually all of us have a role to play. That's why we fund community groups. We're doing lots of work around shared endeavour to make sure young people have resilience so they're not radicalised. hate merchants on either social media or face-to-face, and it's really important we stay resilient to these issues and these potential threats. I prefer to look at the opportunities that our diversity provides. So, for example, we have also the Ramadan lights in the heart of our city, which is great.
I'm glad you mentioned that at the end, because we do have the Ramadan lights in the centre of London. How important is it that we ensure that London shows that it is inclusive and welcome to all Londoners?
Absolutely, and you'll know, particularly in your neck of the woods, the joy there is with the Diwali fireworks. People often get confused that they've got Bonfires Day wrong, but you know it's the Diwali fireworks. That's the joy of our great city. But we can't be complacent and assume it's always going to be great. We've got to work at it all the time.
Thank you. Thank you, and Ramadan Mubarak to all communities and yourself in London.
Thank you. Assembly Member Giorgio, please.
Mr Mayor, you have had to apologise for what many have deemed a non-violent faith-based hate crime incident. How can Londoners trust you to move forward with this issue?
Sorry, Chair, I know that there are no points of information, but I've got no idea what he's talking about.
Well, was there more than one that you don't know? Yeah, I'll leave it there, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. Assembly Member Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor, just I'd like to ask a fairly straightforward question. Is the chant from the river to the sea anti-Semitic?
It's all about context. The issue shouldn't be whether it's legal or not. The issue is how people feel. I've met too many Jewish Londoners who get quite distressed by that. So my point, respectfully, is look, it doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. The issue is how people are feeling. And people saying that is making Jewish Londoners feel quite distressed and quite upset. There are other ways to protest that doesn't cause distress. Do other forms of protest.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You outlined, both in your exchange with Assemblymember Hirani and in your comments to me earlier, a number of steps and measures that you're taking to try and build the strong relationship with the Jewish community. I just think it would be really, really helpful in strengthening that relationship and overcoming that, that kind of feeling. And the polling from Campaign Against Anti-Semitism showing that a very large proportion of British Jews not being happy with your administration's performance on these issues since October the 7th. I think just to bridge that gap, it would be really helpful to come out clearly, unambiguously, calling out that chant for what it is. It is a call for genocide, and it needs to be stamped out.
I'm really happy all day long to compare my record on this matter with Reform's record on this matter. I'm the person that believes in bringing communities together. Reform is a party that believes in winning votes by dividing communities. I believe that a sensible politician should try and bring people together, look at commonalities rather than looking at differences to win votes. And I'm really disappointed that you're using this as an opportunity to try and bring division when you've previously, outside in private, complimented me for what I'd said and the role I've played. But in public, being critical for some cheap votes. You're better than that, surely.
I think we've heard all we need to hear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question comes from Assembly Member Baker, and it concerns a railway fit for London's future.
Thank you for your question. I want everyone travelling to, from and across our city to have the same reliable, frequent and high-quality services. There's currently disparity in the quality of services on the suburban rail network when compared with the rest of London's transport network provided by TfL. We now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to provide Londoners with a truly integrated network and improve rail services for all. TfL has already proven, through the success of the Elizabeth Line and London Overground, that they can improve rail services following devolution. On these services, customers now have more reliable services that are better integrated with onward journeys, and they can plan their journeys more easily, understand fares and benefit from capping. I've been clear in my transport strategy and in my new London growth plan about my ambitions for a London suburban metro system. We're focusing on the services that can be delivered relatively quickly, those currently operated by Great Northern and South Eastern. Devolution of these routes will support new homes and economic growth by maximising the potential of the areas served by these routes. The devolution of Southern and South Western could also be delivered in the medium to longer term. I've already had positive engagement on this with the government, and I've met with the Secretary of State for Transport recently to discuss issues including devolution. I'll continue to take every opportunity to engage with the government on this, making the case for devolution of rail services to London and associated funding. I know TfL will also continue to share its experience and expertise to put forward the key role London can play in delivering the government's vision for rail reform.
Thank you very much, and as always, that's really positive to hear on this subject. I want to ask some specifics. You've always supported metroisation of rail services in London, and obviously we're facing a situation where hopefully TfL and yourself will get the opportunity to request devolution of certain lines, but certainly other lines will, either in the short term, long term, will continue to be run by the government, by Great British Railways. So metroisation would mean higher frequencies, more capacity, shorter journey times, and bring those benefits to the huge proportion of Londoners who rely on rail at the moment. So can you commit to pressing for metroisation both on any lines that end up devolved to TfL and also lines that remain under Great British Railways?
Yeah, I'll use your question as a lobbying device for the benefits of devolution, by the way. Look, an example of how anti-London the government's been over the last 8 years, we've got nothing from them in relation to more devolution of lines since 2016. And actually, when you recognise the government's number one mission is growth, but also metroising these lines leads to growth, you know, it's a reason why the government should say yes to our ask in relation to the two easier lines that I've mentioned, in answer to the question, Great Northern and South Eastern, but also medium to longer terms. We get more people travelling to central London. We get more homes being built along those lines and a better service overall. And I make this point, not to attack the TOCs, but compare and contrast the service their passengers receive, and you allude to this, and the service TfL passengers receive. It's, you know, chalk and cheese. And that's another reason for the government to devolve these services to TfL.
Yes, and I look forward or hope that will be the case. And certainly in response to that, I think no one who works in transport wants to see poor services, but the system has been broken for a long time. So, you know, just the reform that we're looking forward to can resolve that. And finally, on a specific issue, as part of the consultation, the government is consulting on creating a passenger standards authority. It will be a beefed up version that can support passengers to make sure they're at the heart of the decision making, although they recognise the impact it potentially could have on our London Travel Watch, who I believe already do a tremendous work for Londoners. Will you be seeking assurances from the government during this consultation period and afterwards that London Travel Watch will be continued to allow to continue the important work they do?
In my view, sometimes good intentions can lead to results that are unintended, that are not good. And I've experienced over the last 8.5 years as mayor, but also when I was a candidate, the difference having a critical friend can make to TfL and to me as the mayor, deputy mayor, and indeed the role they give your committee and the work that it does. So we'll make sure that one of the unintended consequences of the PSA aren't us losing London Travel Watch, who are a really important watchdog in this area. And they also represent a diversity of views in terms of different users, disabled and so forth. And so it is really important that we protect London's passenger watchdog, and I'll make sure that the team is speaking to DfT about this not being an unintended negative consequence of a well-intentioned ambition to have a passenger standards authority.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Roberts, please.
Thank you. If South Western Rail services are devolved to TfL, will you harmonise tube and rail fares to ensure my residents in South West London pay no more to travel on a TfL train than a TfL tube?
Yes, very good question. So the answer is yes. And so that's one of the reasons why harmonising this makes sense. He'll be aware that the difference we've made to the London Overground. And that's one of the advantages, but also it's really confusing. So the fares freeze that your constituents currently don't benefit from, they'd benefit from if they were part of the metroised system 5 out of the last 8 years.
Thank you. Assembly Member Clark, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just over a year ago, it was great to welcome you to open the Brent Cross West Station, and it's always good to welcome our special friend to Barnet. Just wondering, so that station is the first station that was built with platforms ready for the West London Orbital. Do you have an update on that?
There is a briefing that's lying upstairs in my office. Chair, with your permission, can I email the member and give her an update in relation to where we are?
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's really welcome. And just to note, though, I mean, when your point earlier about how these new stations do unlock potential, it's really welcome news that not only does that new station give more transport options to current residents, but also links Barnet with Brent, which is great because then Krupesh and I can see each other even more often. But perhaps more importantly, it unlocks new homes, new opportunities for jobs, new opportunities for local wealth creation, which benefits everyone. I'm just wondering if there's anything else you want to add to that.
So one of the great things about the West London Orbital work is the councils are really putting their money where their mouth is in terms of them investing, because they can see the difference this will make, and you will know how starved councils are of resources. But they can see the benefit of regeneration of homes. By the way, in the future, those homes and businesses bring in money. Council tax, business rates, more footfall, park connectivity and the other benefits there are of these transport links. So what we're trying to persuade the government of is the importance of infrastructure and transport infrastructure in unlocking homes. The government's got a big, bold target, but also growth as well. You mentioned some of the other knock-on benefits, being able to be able to see each other much easier, not having to cross motorways to see each other. The other benefits of using public transport with active travel and so forth. So the big three things we're lobbying for in relation to this CSR and the next one, because these things take so long, is the DLR extension, West London Orbital, and Bakerloo Line extension at South. We know from the Elizabeth Line, some people were lobbying me to throw in the towel. In 2017, 2018, I chose not to do so. The Northern Line extension, the Superloop, that we can do these projects that are successful and popular. And once they're done, people sort of think, why didn't we do it sooner? And we're trying to use that argument in relation to the government now on these big issues. We can't have ad hoc, stop, start. We need projects all the time. Whether it's a business, a football team, or a city, one that stands still goes backwards. You've got to keep moving forward.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've reached the end of the questions. Therefore, Mr Mayor, you're free to go. Can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in my name, which is that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions asked? Before I move on to the next bit, those Assembly members who will be wanting to visit with the delegation from Bangkok, the committee room is now Committee Room 2 and 3. Rather than what was previously circulated, Committee Room 2 and 3. The next item is the appointments made under the Section 67 of the Greater London Authority Act. Can I ask the Assembly to note the appointment made by the Mayor under Section 67 of the Greater London Authority Act? Can I ask the Assembly to agree in relation to urgent matters only? Agreed. No, I've got to read this one out because it's usually quite controversial. Can I ask the Assembly to agree that in relation to urgent matters only, a general delegation of authority in respect of the Assembly's powers and functions, apart from those that cannot under the Greater London Authority Act 1999 be delegated, be given to me as Chair of the Assembly in consultation with the Chairman of the GLA Oversight Committee, party group leaders and relevant committee chairs from the close of this meeting until the next meeting of the Assembly, which will be the annual meeting on the 1st of May 2025.
Absolutely.
Is that agreed? Nobody against? Not controversial this year. The date of the next meeting is the 1st of May for the annual meeting. There are no items I consider urgent, so that's the close. Thank you very much.
This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.